by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. Hope everybody's ready for the weekend. Holiday weekend coming up. So obviously, if you're traveling, celebrating Memorial Day with friends, family, or if you're going to be here in Indianapolis for the race, safe travels to anybody that's moving around. But today, Brian, we have a Friday Free-For-All Mailbag coming everybody's way. And the last couple of mailbag shows that we've done, it's been themed to the show that we've been doing. This first Friday Free-For-All Mailbag we've done in a little bit. So this is true to its name. It's free for all. Ask any questions that pop in your mind, questions about Notre Dame, college football. It is the off season, so we answer the occasional history question, food question, things like that. But I'm looking forward to today's show, man.
Me too. I'm still honestly mad about how the week started because there was the Bisa hold about Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, and I forget somebody else. And I was so looking forward to answering that question. And I'm still mad about that, but I've gotten over it, and I'm happier, today, Friday, going into this mailbag trip. It'll be a lot more fun. A lot more fun now that we get to hear. But yeah, we're getting so close to June. Irish Invasion is right around the corner. Official visits are right around the corner. And before you know it, players are going to be reporting for their summer workouts. And before you know it, man, we were going over our schedule today, and we've already got our plan for when we're going to do our conference previews and our bold predictions and all those fun things that tell us, hey, the season's ready to start. So, man, I'm fired up today, Trev. I really am fired up for today. So I'm ready to get rocking and rolling.
It's crazy how fast the offseason goes by. Whenever January hits, it feels like you're staring down the barrel of 9 months until feels like we can start talking about Notre Dame football in big chunks. But, man, the offseason's starting to fly by. To your point, it's already almost June. It's going to be a fun one. But before we get to all that fun stuff, like I said, we have a Friday Free-For-All Mailbag going on today. And if this does happen to be your first ever mailbag, because we have new listeners every single day, you can put MB for mailbag, or you can put a mailbox emoji. That lets us know to set your question aside. And then Super Chats always get bumped up to the top. But today's show is dedicated to answering our questions from our daily listeners, and it never really disappoints, man.
It doesn't. You guys have had a great offseason. Trev and I have talked about this a couple times. We're always – in the past, there's always been that time of the year where the questions get a little bit repetitive and okay, we've answered this 87 times, or it's like you guys are, okay, they're just making stuff up now. But there's been so many great questions in Bisa Hold and in the mailbags, and we're kind of past where that usually slows down a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be fun. I did want a little scheduling note. We will not do a live show on Monday, on Memorial Day. I want to give Trev a chance to have the day off. And by the way, by missing the show yesterday, we forgot because I had to cancel yesterday's show. We missed a great opportunity to wish that guy right there a happy birthday. Trevor is now officially in his last year in the 20s. So wanted to wish you a very happy birthday, Trevor. And sorry we didn't get a chance to do that yesterday. But so he had yesterday. It ended up working out because then Trevor kind of could relax a little bit on his birthday. But Memorial Day, we're going to also be off on Memorial Day as well. Wanted to give everybody a chance to kind of spend some time with their families and do those type of things. I don't know if Sean and them are going to go on Monday, but we will not be live on Monday. But we'll be back next Tuesday for sure. With a show, and I'm excited about next week's schedule as well, Trev. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I am ready for this week's mailbag. We do have a super chat to kick things off.
Let's do it. Super chat from Jer Z. Bear. Appreciate the super chat. I can't believe I watched Kyle Busch win the Tuck race last Friday, and I couldn't imagine the fact that 6 days later he would be gone. This was the equivalent of losing Kobe Bryant to NASCAR. Life is so unexpected. Grateful for IB.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I don't follow racing a whole lot. I'm familiar with who Kyle Busch is, but it was really sad. I mean, you see a tweet come out that he's sick and he had to be hospitalized, and then all of a sudden, 6 hours later, something like that, you find out he's passed. And then, for someone like me, Trev, I mean, gosh, he's younger than I was. So very, very sad. And again, I don't know a lot about racing, but for those who are racing fans, I'm sure this one stings quite a bit. But husband, father, but that's real tough stuff. Real tough stuff. So be certainly praying for his family and just kind of what they're going through right now. Can't imagine what that's like. What that's like.
Condolences definitely go out to the Busch family. And then it's never easy in the world of sports when you lose an icon like somebody like Kyle Busch. So It's definitely a rough time, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. I know it's a little bit different, NASCAR versus IndyCar, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of tribute on Sunday during the Indy 500 either.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, kind of, do those fan bases is there like much overlap with that? Like, so like people who are Indy fans are probably also know who NASCAR people are. I wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah, a lot of people who are fans of racing are just once you get into the weeds with it, there's people who prefer IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One, things like that. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was some sort of tribute, because when you're a racing icon, when you're an icon in sports, you get your flowers regardless. So
appreciate that super chat very, very much. And then we transition into this. This is the first question that was submitted today by Josh Buffo. So thanks, Josh.
Oh man, that's so funny, Josh. From my lips to your fingertips to the keyboard. Question from Josh: why is Pat Narduzzi such a scumbag? But really, why is his annoying Notre Dame hate?
We've talked about this before. Somebody on the board said that he was in a interview lately, or he was talking about how he loves Notre Dame, and I don't know. Yeah, but he doesn't act like he loves Notre Dame. He's constantly complaining about Notre Dame, taking shots at Notre Dame. I don't know that Pat Narduzzi is a scumbag. I don't know him personally. I don't think hating Notre Dame makes you a scumbag. It doesn't make you a horrible person. I think it makes me question some of your judgment a little bit, but it doesn't make you a scumbag. But I think some of it's envy. I think some of it is just that. I think some of it is he's still bitter about the fact that they lost that game in 2013. Maybe that's it. I also think he's a coach who doesn't understand economics, the economics of the game. So he doesn't understand why Notre Dame gets special privileges with the ACC. I don't think he understands that. I don't think he would really fathom, or maybe doesn't fathom, or chooses not to care about the fact that his school makes a lot more money the weekends that Notre Dame comes into town than they do any other weekend. So I honestly can't explain it other than that. But it is annoying. It's just like, dude, you're just constantly running your mouth about a program that constantly destroys you. You know, I don't get it. It's not like Notre Dame is taking opportunities for them to go play for an ACC championship away. Notre Dame can beat them 100-0. And it has, as he said last week, he made very clear last year to say, you know, we could lose by whatever, and it doesn't impact our ability to go play for a conference championship. So even that's the thing that ultimately I don't get about a lot of this ACC coaches hate. Notre Dame's not taking any chances away from you guys to play for your conference championship. None. So what are you crying about? If Notre Dame beats all of you by 100 points, it doesn't affect your conference rankings at all. So and if you beat Notre Dame, it's going to get you in the playoffs, as Miami showed last year. What was different about Miami's 2 losses last year compared to the 2 losses the year before? In Miami, I would argue, is even more impressive in a lot of their wins in 2024 than they were in 2025. What was the difference in Miami being ranked outside the top 10 and inside the top 10? What was the difference? One difference. In one year, they did not beat Notre Dame, and the other year, they beat Notre Dame, and that was the thing that vaulted Miami into the playoffs. And let's be honest about that. So I don't get all the crying. It's just annoying. But Pat Narduzzi is like the ringleader of the ACC crybabies, which you don't hear as much about right now because of how much whining we're hearing coming from SEC coaches. It's like, you know, Steve Sarkisian's got his little shots at Texas Tech. It's like, when you said something stupid when I'm defending Texas Tech, because I can't stand that program right now. But we could beat them with our 2s. Bro, you were just in the Big 12, and you were only good in one of those 3 years. You know what I mean? What are we doing here? Just some silliness coming from the SEC. Here's a thought. How about you guys just stop crying and get better? Imagine that. Who crazy concept that is, Trev. But anyway, thoughts on Pat Narduzzi?
Yeah, I echo a lot of the same sentiment that you have about Pat Narduzzi. I don't know enough about him personally to call him a scumbag. I do think now there's a plethora of annoying coaches in college football, but I think out of those, there's a minority portion that are considered like scumbags. I don't know if Pat Narduzzi's a scumbag, but I think he's annoying.
I'm not putting him in the same category as Hugh Freeze and Lane Kiffin and some guys like that, but believe he's still married to the same lady, as a daughter that I think either went to Pitt or just graduated or something like that. So, yeah, he's very annoying, though.
From Facilitate, have you guys seen that season highlight video titled Notre Dame 24-25 season highlights? It's epic, especially the second half showing the playoff run and all. Kind of a must-see.
Is that something that Notre Dame released?
No, it's probably a YouTube video that somebody put together that's out there.
Isn't that kind of sad that random dudes on the internet do way better season highlight videos than what Notre Dame provides for their fans?
I do know that in the defense of Notre Dame, I think they put out like a 24 season recap. So that was like an 8-minute video. So that
was not great. I didn't think. Like, I thought it could be way better, but I just, whatever. I'm very frustrated with Notre Dame when it comes to that kind of stuff. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's go to Salty.
From Salty, the word on the street is that Ohio State has taken the lead in Marcus Fakatou's recruitment. He has a late May official visit to Ohio State upcoming. Where does Notre Dame stand now?
A lot of these questions, Salty, are more kind of for the message board, but I mean, that's not word on the street. That's literally from an On3 article that says from Marcus Freeman's lips Marcus Fakatou's lips that Ohio State's his new leader. I don't know that right now I'd want to be considered his leader because he's changed leaders many times. It was Notre Dame, then it was Michigan, then it was Oregon, now it's Ohio State. With Marcus Fakatou, and this is not a shot at the kid. Look, you go through this process, you're going to have these ups and downs. That's part of going through this process. But the point I'm making is, like, it's going to be who's the last man standing, so to speak, with this one. We'll see. I don't feel I've been back and forth on how confident I feel, and I've often wondered, like, is he going to be this year's Rodney Dunham? Where he kind of other schools he loves, but then when he makes those trips back to Notre Dame, it always brings him back to, kind of where his heart is and or at least where his heart was originally. But if I were making a pick today, I would go with Ohio State because from Marcus's own mouth, he has said Ohio State's his leader. But we'll see. We'll see. But Notre Dame's going to keep battling. They're going to get a official visit from him. I think he's doing one of those ones in the middle of the week, which I don't ever feel super great about. But we'll see how it plays out.
From Mick Small, who had the better touchdown run? Loves against IU or Kyron Williams against North Carolina or Dexter Williams against Virginia Tech?
Okay, so if there's two ways I look at this one, Trev. Number one is what was the biggest, like the most impactful. That's clearly the Jeremiah Love run because it was in the playoffs. But you talk about best. I mean, Jeremiah Love's was a great run, but he didn't get touched. It was good blocking, and he made a great read, and his speed was just unbelievable. Kyron Williams had to shake off 3 defenders in the backfield, cut around the backside, and go up the sideline for his 91-yard touchdown run. So if you're talking about better, if we're talking about most important, it's the Jeremiah Love touchdown. Number 1, probably Dexter's number 2, Kyron's number 3, because they're going to beat North Carolina no matter what. If you're going to talk about what was the most physically impressive, I mean, that one from Kyron Williams was unbelievable. I mean, I would argue if I was going to stack a run up, because I get where he's coming from these are all the 90-something yard runs. I still don't think the 98-yard run against Indiana was his best run. I think the best run of Jeremiah Love's career is a 2-yard run, and that was the one against Penn State. That's the one that if you want to put degree of difficulty in there, I'd put that one up against Kyron's. But if we're talking about most impactful, it's Love IU. If we're talking about most impressive, wow, what a play! I got to go with Kyron's against North Carolina.
Yeah, agreed. He needed the most amount of work to get to where he capped it off. And Mike, shout out to Mike Tirico for one of my favorite Notre Dame calls he had on Kyron Williams' touchdown run. That was phenomenal. But I'm with you. Same order.
That Kyron run against North Carolina was a crazy run. That's kind of similar to Jeremiah Love's run against Navy this year. Is similar type of run.
From Irish in Florida, what currently is the most important to Notre Dame? Talent acquisition, talent retention, or talent maximization? Thanks, and go Irish.
Honestly, I don't think you can separate. I'll answer your question because I want to be fair to the question you're asking. But if I'm giving you an honest assessment of building a football program, they're all important. Because it doesn't matter what your retention is or what your maximization is if you're not able to acquire talent. If you acquire talent but you can't keep the talent, it doesn't matter that you can acquire. It doesn't matter how much your ability to maximize it because you never get a chance to maximize it. If you can acquire it and you can retain it but you can't develop it, again, you're going to fall short of your ultimate goal. So I think you remove one of them and they all kind of aren't as good. They're all not as important, right? So I mean, that's a big part of it. But to answer the question, I'd put talent acquisition at the top of the list because if you can't acquire it, those other two things don't mean a whole lot. And if you just take a very average roster and give them great retention and great maximization, are they going to be any different record-wise than a team that's got great talent acquisition, solid retention, and maximization? I think the team with more talent tends to win more often than not when you're missing a very key ingredient. The best teams in the country are those that have 1 and 3. I would say the least important of those 3, if I had to say which one is least important, it's retention. Because if you're great at acquisition and great at maximization, then you can just keep restocking and then coaching those kids up.
Yeah.
You won all 3. But that's the one that I would say if I could live without one, that would be the one that I would want to live without.
I'm with you because if you're good at acquiring talent, it means you're good at evaluating it when it's coming in, and the goal is to find the right fit for your program, which would off the bat maximize talent retention. So I'm with you.
Yeah, it's a good question.
From Aiden Benami, thoughts on players playing baseball at Notre Dame? Is it worth it?
If they think it is, then I support it. I mean, look, Trev, I'm sitting here at 48 years old. I can barely lift my arms above my shoulders. I got bad shoulders. I'm overweight. And I miss the days when I could play sports at a high level. And, the point being, you get one window in your life to do this. You get one window in your life to be able to play football and baseball. And if your desire is to play both and you're good enough to play both, go for it. Now, that means, maybe there's a chance that you may not be able to develop a certain way in one of the sports, and that's part of life, but you're going to be able to look back and say, man, I had this great opportunity to do both. And for some players, it ends up not being worth it to do both. Drake Bowen played baseball for a year and realized it's not worth it. I'm going to stick with football. Jeff Samardzija did it his whole career and then decided that maybe baseball is an even better option for me at the next level. So I think it varies player to player. They have to make whatever decision is best for them to be able to go continue. Jordan Faison did lacrosse for 3 years and then decided in his last year he really wanted to give football a full-time go. So it just depends for each player, but I'm a complete believer, Trev, that if you want that opportunity and the coaches are willing to give you that, then take it if that's what you want to do. That's your life. And also understanding that sometimes that means maybe somebody else who's only playing football may beat you out. That's part of life. That's a choice you make, but I fully support a young man's ability to do that as long as he's doing the things he needs to do off the field to, make sure he's also handling his business in all areas of life. You don't want to get overwhelmed with academic work or, whatever, your body, not giving your body enough time to heal and certain things. Those type of things you got to consider. But if you want to do that, do it, because this is your last chance to be able to do those kind of things. Because the number of Bo Jacksons and Deion Sanderses and Brian Jordans are extremely rare to be able to do it at the professional level. So if that's what you want to do, man, go for it. Live that dream.
Agreed completely. As long as you were able to balance your schedule and it doesn't interfere with the other that you're trying to do, then yeah, I'm all for it. All for it.
We just had another super chat pop up, Trev. Thank you from Todd Brammy.
Appreciate the super chat, Todd. If the Irish go undefeated and wins a national championship this year, how long do you think their winning streak will last, with 2027 potentially being the easiest schedule under Coach Freeman?
Oh, man. Let me look up the schedule again, because it's not a complete schedule. And right now, we know of 10 teams for sure. There's 11 listed by football schedules, fbschedules.com. They have Duke, but Notre Dame won't comment on whether or not Duke's an actual opponent or not yet. I don't know if it's even easier or not, Trev. There's so much that we don't know about these teams. I think Michigan State on the road in 2027 is going to be a lot tougher than Wisconsin, Purdue, Michigan State, North Carolina, or Stanford this year. I think Auburn at home is going to be a tough game. You've got to play at Clemson. Who are they going to be? Year 2 of James Franklin at Virginia Tech. You've got BYU on the schedule. You've got Georgia Tech, Duke. I mean, so I think it's a comparable schedule to this year. But I will say this. If Notre Dame goes undefeated this season and wins a title, I think they've got a shot to set the school record. I'm looking that up right now, but I believe it was 20. Like, I think Lou Holtz's team set that record, I believe. But I'd have to go back and look that up here real quick. So yeah, I think it's 23 games is from Lou Holtz. So it was the 12 games of 2000 and actually, I don't think that's even right. Hold on a second. They won 12 games. Yeah, it's 23. Yeah, they won 12 games in 1988, and then won their first 11 games in 1989 until they lost to Miami in the last game of the regular season. So that would have been 23 games. And then obviously beat Colorado, number 1 Colorado in the next game. So, yeah, that was back in the glory days of Notre Dame football. But yeah, because then you'd go 16-0. Well, actually, so if they do that, first of all, I don't even know why I'm talking about the record that Lou Holtz's record, because you already beat that. If you go 16-0 this year, you'll beat that record. Matter of fact, if Notre Dame wins their first playoff game, they will tie. If they go undefeated, win their first playoff game, they'll tie the all-time record. If they get to the semis, assuming they have a first, because I think we assume that if Notre Dame goes 12-0, they're getting a bye, right? If they win a semifinal game, they'll set an all-time record. I think you're getting into the 30s before Notre Dame might lose a game, Trev, because you look at the 27 schedule, you're going to get Purdue in week 1, then somebody in week 2. I don't know who that's going to be yet. At Michigan State. So maybe Auburn at home the next week. So less Michigan State or Auburn can beat you, you're talking about getting into the 30s. And then if you get past the Auburn game undefeated, you've got Kent State. And then a week later, you've got Wake Forest in a neutral field in Charlotte, North Carolina, you'll fit BYU, Georgia Tech, and Duke in there somewhere. But yeah, I think if they win it all this year and go 16-0, I think they get into the 30s easily. I don't know that I'm not going to predict back-to-back undefeated seasons for Notre Dame. Even with the schedule the way that it is, that's just hard to do. Especially if they go 16-0 and run the table this year, the chances of most of their underclassmen coming back are not great. So, but I think they could get into the 30s. I completely forgot that they're already riding a 10-game win streak. I completely forgot about that. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, the streak will definitely get up there. I can confidently say that FanDuel would put their over-under win total again at 11.5. I can almost guarantee you that. But It's going to be – it'll creep up close to 30. But, Brian, you bring up a good point. If Notre Dame does what we think that they're going to this year, dude, the amount of players coming back will also dictate how long I think their winning streak will go in 2027.
Right.
Super chat from ND Milton fan. Appreciate you. Why does Brian Kelly get so much credit for modernizing Notre Dame? He alienated alumni and benefited more from Notre Dame's investment than drove it.
Because Brian Kelly was great at manipulating the media and getting them to run cover for him and give him credit for things that he didn't really do. Jack Swarbrick should get the majority of the credit for that, not Brian Kelly. I'm not saying Brian Kelly had no role, but I don't really give him a ton of credit for that. And I didn't when he was still here. And if Notre Dame goes out, like, I don't give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit for the new football facility, because it's not like nobody thought that. Marcus Freeman walked in and said, "Hey, we should do this," and then they went out and said, "All right, cool, we'll do this." Like, you get credit for building a program that people want to donate money to, but it's really up to the AD and the people who are responsible for raising money at Notre Dame. I don't know if that's development or who that would be, to be able to build things like that. So you build a program that people want to give money to, then that's helpful. And that's where I think Brian Kelly deserves credit, is you build a program to where you were winning games, thanks in large part to your AD making easier schedules for you. And two of your big rivals sucked in the last few years of your tenure at Notre Dame, and haven't been good during Marcus Freeman's tenure either, for outside of one season. So yeah, I think a lot of it's because nobody promotes Brian Kelly better than Brian Kelly. And then he had people in the media that would just kind of, whatever he told them. It's amazing what people will write when you promise them access. It's amazing. So I think that's a big reason for it.
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up, because Sean and I had a spirited debate last night on the radio show. We got a super chat on if Brian Kelly underperformed at Notre Dame. And I'll just say there was a difference of opinion, but I think one of the reasons why Brian Kelly gets as much credit as what he does is because he was coming off of, the 07 to 09 Weiss eras. Fans would look back like, well, it's better than what we had under Tyrone Willingham. It's better than what we had under Bob Davie. So it has to be better. And I think he gets a lot of credit in that way, because like performance on the field, it was better than the Tyrone Willingham days, but that doesn't mean that Brian Kelly is the sole reason the school got modernized.
There were a lot of seasons where Brian Kelly's teams underachieved.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you were the person who argued that they underachieved under Brian Kelly.
Yeah. Strongly.
Yeah. They had no business going 8-5 in 2010, no business going 8-5 in 2011. They had no business going 9-4 in 2013. They had no business going 8-5 in 2015. They had no business losing to every ranked team that they played in 2015. They had no business going, losing 8 games in 2016. They had no business going on the road and getting destroyed by Miami, and then getting blasted again 2 weeks later by Stanford in 2017. Again, underachieved. 2018, great season. 2019, again, you played like 2 good teams all year, and they both beat you. One of them blew you out. I mean, the guy had basically a 500 record against teams that were in the top 15 to 20 during his career. A significant losing record against teams in the top 10. It wasn't like 10-11. It was a significant losing record against teams that ranked in the top 10. So, yeah, I'm sorry. His teams definitely did underachieve during his tenure at Notre Dame. There's no question about it. That doesn't mean he was terrible. I've never said he was terrible. He did good things in Notre Dame. The frustration is that he didn't do what it takes to get over that last hump. That was the issue at Notre Dame. That's why he did underachieve for what he should have been. You can't tell me that a coach who had a team that had Michael Floyd, Zach Martin, Tyler Eifert, Dane Chris, Theo Riddick, Sear Wood, Jonas Gray, Zach Martin, Chris Watt, Braxton Cave, Ethan Johnson,
Smith.
Johnson, Harrison Smith. I was going front to back. Capron Lewis Moore, Darius Fleming, Manti Te'o, Carlo Calabrese, Robert Blanton, Gary Gray, Harrison Smith, Zeke Mata, Jamor Slaughter. There's no reason that team should have come anywhere close to going 8-5. And Lewis Nix, Stephon Tuitt, Aaron Lynch, that team had no business going 8-5. And that's exactly what they did. 9-3 would have been disappointing that season looking at it going in. TJ Jones, another NFL draft pick, that team had no business going 8-5. And there were a lot of seasons like that under Brian Kelly. A lot of seasons like that. And I'm just talking about what happened on the football field. I don't like getting into the off the field stuff when talking about that because, I just don't.
Super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. I've seen a lot of conversation lately by On3 pundits about should Notre Dame and BYU play every year. What do you think?
I always love how like weeks after we have conversations that these On3 pundits miraculously come up with these ideas to talk about things that we've talked about like 2 weeks before. We had a whole segment on this. But yes, as we stated in the show where we talked about this topic, BYU, yes, we would love it if Notre Dame and BYU scheduled some kind of longer term rivalry. If you can't fit it in every year, I understand. 4 on, 2 off, 4 on, 2 off, something like that's fine. But yes, we've talked about it in 2 different shows now so far. So yeah, I do notice that the I'm sure it comes to them. I'm sure it just comes to them later than it comes to us. I'm sure that's it, Trev. But
Most
yes,
likely.
I would love it. I would love it if they did it. Trev, I think you even I wrote an article on it. I also wrote an article on it. So yeah. And we're not talking, Jari, we're not talking about you, my man. So you're all good. We understand you guys can't watch every show. Totally fine with that. Our shot was more at On3 than it was at you, buddy. So you're good. But no, I wouldn't like that. There's just a lot of different things to this rivalry that make a lot of sense. They're blue-collar teams. There's the religious aspect. One's a school, one's a Mormon school, one's a Catholic school. One's a team out west, one's a Midwestern team. They're the way they came up is different. Notre Dame always came up as that hard-nosed defensive football team that ran the football, don't have a lot of quarterbacks with tons of numbers. BYU came up as, the West Coast offense with their quarterbacks throwing for 4,000 and 5,000 yards. And, there's even sort of the rivalries you had. I mean, they played each other a little bit in the 90s. You have Ty Detmer beating out Rocket Ismail for the Heisman Trophy and what I still believe is the worst Heisman decision of all time. Well, second worst. If I'm being fair, Gino Toretto winning it over Marshall Faulk and Garrison Hurst was even worse than Ty getting it over Rocket, but it's barely worse. So I think there's a lot of reasons why I think that'd be a cool rivalry.
Yeah, for sure.
So yes, we would like that. We would like for that to happen. Yes.
Super chat from Tom Connor. Appreciate your time. Do you think that Bavacqua's comments about the 2014 playoff is him trying to make it easier to schedule good teams where a loss won't keep from making the playoffs?
No, I think this is nothing more than him jumping on the side of the conferences he wants to be affiliated with, which is the ACC and the Big Ten, and him doing what is best for TV networks like NBC and Fox. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, Trevor, like December and January, where Pete Bavacqua was on record saying you should never go past 16. And now all of a sudden he's a vocal spokesman for 2014 playoff. Like, sorry, bro. I liked your reasoning more when you were giving your own heartfelt reason. Now that you've had your conversations with the networks and ESPN, and not ESPN, but ACC and the Big Ten, and it's kind of like he's doing this, I don't know, to appease them. But I don't believe that Pete Bavacqua believes that 24 teams is best, because we got a more true answer from him a few months ago when he talked about it being it shouldn't go past 16. 16 is the most we should do. Now all of a sudden he's got all these lame reasons for why we should go to 24, which we talked about. But again, Tom, I would encourage you to go listen to our Wednesday show, because we talked about this very topic for about an hour. And so we're not going to be able to do justice to that topic. Again, we explained to you in that show the reasons why we felt Pete Bavacqua is saying what he's saying now. So I would encourage you to listen. And I'm gonna put that just individual segment up tomorrow morning on the podcast, so you'll be able to check it out there. But yeah, it's lame. It's lame,
without a doubt.
Freaking 2014 playoff. It's so sad that the people that are supposed to be the stewards of the sport just don't care about the sport. It's so much just about what can we do to make more money.
The thing that's so disheartening about Pete Bavacqua's comments, and I'm going to chair my overall reactions until some things unfold before we know what the true conversations were between Notre Dame and the ACC. But at the time when the ACC ran their smear campaign and Notre Dame was held out of the playoffs, I said that Notre Dame had basically 2 different paths that they could go. They could just say, screw it, if you're going to paint us as the villain, then we're going to lean into it full tilt and and be that villain of college football. I use air quotes. Or they're going to do everything they can to get back in the good graces of people and play the I want people to like us game.
Mm-hmm.
And I know where falling in line with the 2014 playoff is, and it's not to be the villain of college football.
Yep. But you're still going to be the villain of college football.
Uh-huh.
That's what makes me so pissed about this. Like, dude, they're going to hate you no matter what.
Uh-huh.
So look out for yourself. It's
100%.
very sad, honestly, to see it. Frustrating and disappointing, not sad. Frustrating and disappointing is more of the word.
From Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, what would be your most realistic outcome for yards in a season for your projected starting Notre Dame wide receivers? Same for the running backs.
So we got asked this a bunch of times last year, and I have a feeling we're going to ask this a bunch of times this year. And at the end of the day, I don't know, nor do I really want to spend a ton of time trying to make those predictions again. We'll have some fun with this when we do our bold prediction show before the season. But look, next year's not going to be a whole lot different than this year, guys, in regard to one thing that we said last year. Now, we were wrong on our predictions. We thought Greathouse and Malachi Fields were going to be the two guys that had a lot of the yards, and ended up being Fields and Jordan Faison. But the one thing we said is the ball is going to get spread around a lot, and the ball got spread around a lot. And I think the same thing is going to be true in 2026. The ball is going to get spread around a lot. What does that look like? I don't know. Will Jordan Faison have similar numbers to last year but be a better player? Don't know. Will he put up even more numbers than last year? Will he put up less numbers than last year but be an even better player? I would argue that Malachi Fields was a better player last year than he was his last year at Virginia, even those numbers didn't reflect it because of the way the ball was spread around, and they also had the two best running backs in college football on their team. So numbers don't always reflect how well you're playing. And, what is that going to mean for like a Jordan Faison? I don't know. What's that going to mean for Jaden Greathouse or Quincy Porter or Mylan Graham or Micah Gilbert or Cam Williams or Elijah Burris? I don't know the answers to those questions. But I do know that I'm quite confident in saying I believe the ball is going to get spread around even more next year, because I think there's even more weapons on next year's team, the 26 team, the upcoming season, than there was in this past year's season.
Yeah, Josh, I would, for the running back specifically, my prediction, big picture, I won't dive into it too much, but I would go look at the production of the Georgia running backs in 2022, specifically Kenny McIntosh. I think Kenny McIntosh's numbers could look very, very similar to what Aeneas Williams could do this upcoming. He had like 800 to 900 some odd rushing yards, 500 receiving yards over the course of like a 15-game season. So I think that their running back room could look like that.
Yep, definitely think so. Here's one.
From J. Melvin Bryan, I've never heard your opinion on this, but who do you think would win a hypothetical matchup between 2001 Miami versus 2019 LSU? Do the Canes dominate, or does LSU have a shot?
I don't know that I've ever said who I think would win, and be willing to bet you if I was asked this question 10 times, I'd give you a different answer every time. I'd go back and forth between Miami and LSU.
Yeah.
I think I've said the reason I would give the advantage to Miami, it doesn't mean they're going to win, is because I think Miami was better on both sides of the ball. I think Miami was better on offense than what LSU was on defense. But I think you could also make a case that even as talented as Miami's 2021 defense or 2001 defense was, you could make a case, Trevor, that the LSU 2019 offense was as good, if not better. So, I think that in one breath, I say, listen, I think that Miami has the DBs to run with the LSU receivers, but then I also tell myself, but can you really stop Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Terrace Marshall and Thaddeus Moss and Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield and Joe Burrow's scrambling ability? I don't know that you can do that. And then on the flip side, I say, but could LSU's defense stop that Miami offense? I mean, I'm constantly back and forth depending on what the matchup is, Trev, because simply put, they were two great teams.
Yeah.
Where I would probably, again, give a slight edge, in my opinion, to Miami is because I think Miami's offense is better than LSU's defense. I start thinking about Andre Johnson and Jeremy Shockey and guys like that. You start saying, boy, that team was pretty loaded. The defense in 2001 for Miami was better. But I have argued in the past, Trevor, and I will still argue this. I know they lost a game early to Washington, but I think that 2000 Miami team might have been even better because that was the team that had Santana Moss and Reggie Wayne and Otter Johnson, and I think Frank Gore was on that. I mean, that team was ridiculous. It's just they didn't run the table, whereas they did run the table the previous year, or the next year, I should say.
Outside of the LSU fan base, I don't know if you'll find a bigger fan of the 2019 LSU team than me. And I even think if they played 10 times, each team would win 5 times. I genuinely believe that. I mean, it's difficult because you're comparing eras, but it's not too far apart from like comparing like, a 1977 Notre Dame team to the 2024 Notre Dame team. It's not as disparaging of a gap, but LSU every single game would have to hope for a shootout. Like if it's a defensive game, I mean, we're talking about a Miami team. I've said this before, and it's one of my favorite sports stats ever. If they scored 0 offensive points, they'd be 8-5. Like we're talking about that generational offense going up against that type of generational defense. And I think there'd be games where it would, LSU would be able to have the upper hand because of just the depth and the amount of weapons that they had on offense. But then at the same time, I mean, I do think Miami was better in the trenches on both sides of the ball too.
Yeah.
In 01 than what LSU was. That's why I think
Brian
that they would have
McKinney on that O-line. And by the way, I said Frank Gore. Frank Gore came later. I met James Jackson, who was actually originally committed to Notre Dame, was on the 2000 team with Clinton Portis. But yeah, Trev, that O-line for Miami was really good. But then again, you look at that 2019 LSU defense, and we forget that they had Patrick Queen, they had Jacob Phillips, like they had
Chason,
exactly.
Delpit. Yeah, man.
Like, they weren't like bad on defense. It's not that they were bad on defense. A big reason they gave up over 20 points that year is because they were on the field so much because their offense scored so much and so quickly. So I say that's why I say I'm back and forth on it. Because they were both, to me, generational teams. They were unbelievable teams. So I think it'd be a great game. It'd be a great game. The part of the reason I also go with the 2000 Miami team is because I think that was a better coached Miami team than the 2000. The 2001 team just got by on. They were just so much more talented than everybody else. But there were several games in that 01 season where Miami just kind of sleptwalked through the season, through the game, just because they were so talented. And then they kind of woke up. Like the BC game woke them up, and then the next couple of weeks they killed. I mean, like after the BC game where they struggled, I think, wasn't that the game where Ed Reed handed the ball, or the D lineman recorded a fumble and recovered a fumble and then handed it to Ed Reed, and he went and ran it in. But like they were smoking people a little bit, and then they were just kind of getting sloppy. They were sloppy, blowing out West Virginia, sloppy, blowing out Temple. Then they struggle with BC. Then the next 2 weeks, they beat number 15 Syracuse 59-0, and then beat number 11 Washington 65-7. And that was payback. That was payback for the year before, and Washington was the only team to beat them. But then that next week, they go on the road and played Virginia Tech, and it was a battle. They only won by 2. So those are 2 great teams. They were both better than the 02 team, but that's because you were now dealing with more of the Larry Coker effect and less of the Butch Davis effect. So I think they'd be 2 great games. I do. And as I said, in this conversation, you and I have both been back and forth between LSU and Miami.
Yeah.
I don't think Miami's like, do they dominate? Anything can happen in a game. But if I'm just talking about matchups, I think they'd be great games. I think if they played 10 times, you'd have one Miami blowout, one LSU blowout, and then a bunch of back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think would happen.
Agreed completely.
Those would be great games. Man,
they need to do like the Rocky Balboa. Like, do you remember the simulator fight in Rocky Balboa? They need to do that with those 2 teams.
Yeah. When he fought, what was his, Mason the Line Dixon?
Mason the Line Dixon.
Yeah.
Question in here from Rob Tidoff. Brian and the IB crew, what type of IB national championship apparel will you have when we win the Natty? Finally, after 38 years. It's going to happen. At least I hope. Go Irish.
I don't know that I'll have a lot of apparel. I've thought about maybe having some shirts that, like, have some fun, like finally, so I don't know. The only thing that I have, I did buy some Gap closed shirts that I'll be rocking in the post game show after the title game if they win it.
Yeah, I went on record and said it in the show. I'm writing it in Sharpie, Irish national champs on my forehead and going to the store. That'll be my apparel that I wear. But whatever Brian gets as far as IB merch, yeah, you can catch me in that.
Yeah, like I don't do merch from the standpoint, like we have merch and I love that we have merch, but like I don't make a lot of money off the merch. Our prices basically are to the point where I don't lose money off of it, because I have to pay for shipping and handling and all that stuff. So it's priced to not cost me money. I don't do it to necessarily drive revenue. I have the merch because I think it's people like to be a part of what we're doing here. It's IB Nation. It's like the community. They want to have the IB gear, which I love. And it's also great advertising when people are wearing that stuff around, especially at Notre Dame games. But so I've never really thought about, people always say, oh, you wear shirts for this. And I'm like, I don't know that I really look at it that way, because I don't want to start getting into the merch business to start, adding a bunch of new profit and revenue. I kind of do it to, for us, for the community, you know what I mean? And that's why we don't really make a lot of money off of it. But I mean, if you guys came up with something that you'd want to buy, come up with it and we can get them made and get them on the store and stuff like that. But that's why I don't do a lot of these like annual shirts. People say, why don't you guys have your own annual shirt? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know. It's just not, we don't really do the merch for that, for that kind of stuff. Because there's several times I've thought like, man, if we did a shirt like this, boy, we could make some bucks. But I don't really look at it like that, because we just don't charge enough. We'd have to sell so many shirts to make like a big like enough of a profit off of it to where it would actually be a cool thing to do, or be worth it. But maybe in some ways I feel like I run a really good business. In other ways I don't, because my whole thing is not maximizing profit and maximizing revenue. I want it to be affordable, and I want more people to have access to it and stuff like that, which limits just how much money we can make, but we do okay. We're doing fine. And it's the community that matters more to me than that.
It's a Friday Free-For-All Mailbag here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And getting us kicked off here, we have Sean Stewart here with a question. Which plays from Holtz's time at Notre Dame would you like to see them run?
They're the only one that I think would be cool, and they actually did it against Ohio State in 2023. I would love for Notre Dame to get in that full house backfield near the goal line that they did back then. Quarterback under center, and then that three guys all together. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, give me the starting offensive line and then the full house backfield, and put in like Jagasaw and one of the Flanagans and like Kedron Young, and then just. Yeah, that would be.
Stop it.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, see if you can.
From Moneybag Jake, what's one thing on offense and one thing on defense that you're most confident about in this 2016? It's a good question.
So what's funny is we're going to kind of do a show like this next week. One of the shows we're going to do next week is going to be why will Notre Dame win a title in 2026? And part of that will be the things we're most confident in. But I'd say the thing that I'm most confident in 2026 on offense is that I think Notre Dame's going to have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I'm confident saying that. I think their throwing game is going to remain efficient and aggressive and very good, which it was last year. The one thing that I'm confident on defense, I'm very confident that the run defense this year is going to be outstanding. That's something I'm very, very confident in. More so than, I know they have a great secondary, but will the secondary be utilized to play to its full potential? That's a question. I mean, I'm just being objective. It's a question. But one thing that we did see from Chris Ash's defense last year is they're very good against the run, and they're built to be good against the run. And the personnel against the run this year will be even better than it was last year because of the portal transfers and the return of Jason Onye and Armel Mukum's emergence, and Elisha Hughes goes into year 2, and you've got Christopher Burgess and Keon Keeley, and there's just all the linebackers are back. So I think they're going to be really good against the run.
Yeah, for me on offense, it's having Mike Denbrock. I mean, that cat has shown that at every stop he can put together championship caliber offenses. LSU did not compete for a title in 23 because of their offense. I mean, in some bigger moments even last year, obviously there's still some tweaks to be made, but Notre Dame didn't lose to Texas A&M because they put up 40 points, believe me. And then defensively, it's just they have the talent to do so. The talent on that defensive roster is just insane. I mean, I thought Al Golden was a heck of a defensive coordinator in 2023, but they didn't have an edge rusher opposite of Javante Jean-Baptiste. They didn't have another safety opposite of Xavier Watts that was on relative or equal playing fields. And they have that this year. And that is just, and when they have the experience to boot, it gives me a lot of confidence moving forward. From ND Football, at my age, 25, I'm getting hit with the realization that all of these players are younger than me. It feels like a culture shock to realize those aren't fully grown men. Is that just a me thing?
It wasn't for me. I remember when I got into coaching, starting to look at Notre Dame players differently than I ever had prior to that. Because then you start realizing, oh, shoot, I'm now at the age now where I'm older than most of these guys, if not all of these guys. And so, yeah, there was definitely a realization where when you're a kid, you look up at them almost like, like you do professional football players. I remember those guys being adults and grown-ups and things like that, and just these big burly guys. And the Notre Dame players, especially like back in the 80s, they looked like grown men. I mean, they had mustaches and they were big guys. Yeah, so I completely I can if it's just a you thing, then it's just a you and me thing, because I had that same feeling. It seems Trev did as well.
I made such a drastic jump. I mean, you guys know this. For the longest time, I was just a fan of the team, and Brian gave me this opportunity to come in and be in this setting. And the first time I was ever around a player was at a press conference in 2024 for the Virginia game. That was my first time being up in the press box. Vince and I believe, went to the post game press conference, and one of the players came in the room, and I was like, that for a brief second. Internally, I was like, oh my goodness, that's Jeremiah Love. Oh my goodness. And then I was like, dude, get a hold of yourself. He's like 19. Yeah. I was like, I am a 27-year-old grown man. I was like, all right,
this is your job now.
Let's walk this. But like, if I just saw a 19-year-old walking around downtown, I wouldn't be like, yo, that is a dude. But it's because since they're collegiate athletes, we put them up on this pedestal of like, well, understandably so. They play in front of tens of thousands of people every single Saturday. I get it. But that was it's not just UND football. I was 27 years old and I had to have that kind of get yourself together kind of thing. So
pull it together, Trev. Come on, man.
Lock in. So yeah, not just you, man. From Leahy CM, what are your feelings about the Big 18 commish speaking on wanting 10 conference games based on the 2014 playoff?
My feelings are I have always and still continue to despise Tony Petitti. He is the worst thing to happen to college football, honestly, as an individual person with the things he's driving, because his league is powerful and makes a lot of money and is winning. He gets to have more say in some of these stupid things. Honestly, I'm at the point now, Trevor, I'm so disgusted with college football and the directions it's going in so many different ways. I wish the Big 12 and the ACC would just partner with the SEC and say, we're just going to shut the Big 10 out. You guys want to only play yourselves. You guys, because here's the thing. We talked about it last year. Whatever you think about the SEC, and trust me, I got plenty of negative vibes on the SEC. You know what we got almost every week last week? Almost every week last week was great in-conference games from the ACC or the SEC. You know what we got almost every week last year in the Big Ten? A bunch of garbage games. The occasional good game, but a bunch of garbage games, because they basically try to make it to where the top teams have easier schedules. Now, it's not perfect, and this year, like Ohio State has an easier one, but like Penn State's schedule was a joke. Indiana's schedule remains not as difficult as it should be, and that also is easier to do when you have 18 flipping teams in your league. And say, look, you guys want to only play each other? Fine. Like go play with yourselves. And I mean that in every possible way that you could take that question. Just go Big Ten, just go play with yourselves, and we'll all stop. We'll all just keep playing football the way it's been done for 100 years. You know, like it just disgusts me, man. I hate the Big Ten. They destroyed the Pac-12, and now the Pac-12 helped in their own demise. But you know, you schedule this scheduling agreement with the Pac-12 all while you're working to undermine the Pac-12. You know, you're doing all these things just because it's just more money. Because here's the reality of it: when you go to 10 games, let's be like we're pulling the curtain back, right? No matter what Tony Petitti tells you, there's one reason they're talking about playing 10 conference games. One, because when you play a conference game, the revenue is split between who? Two conference opponents. That's it. Y'all, I keep telling you, the Big Ten is not in the great financial position that people think they are. That's why they're doing private equity. That's why they want the 2014 playoff. That's why they're talking about this mess. Because they have too many teams and don't have the revenue to be able to pay what these teams need. These teams spend outside of their budgets. They're all hurting financially. Not all. A lot of them are hurting financially. And Tony Petitti is doing nothing more than what can we do to make the most money profitable, and we don't care what we're destroying in order to do that. Well, when two conference teams are playing, guess what you don't have to do? Pay that team to come play you. You have to, expenses and all that stuff get covered, but you also have to sign these deals where, hey, you come play us, we'll give you $1 million to come play us. You have to do that when you're playing conference opponents. That's all it is. It's another game that's going to guarantee to be on your TV networks. That's what it is. So let's not fall for these lies. People continue to, it's amazing how many fans just continue to fall for what they're told. Oh, well, they only want 24 because of it. No, they don't. That has nothing to do with it. You know, like, and look, and I don't have sympathy for ESPN and the SEC because ESPN brought us to this mess. ESPN's the one that for a decade convinced us that bowl games don't matter and playoffs are all that matter. But now they want to cap the playoffs at a smaller number. Why? Not for the integrity of the playoff, not because of any other reason other than what? If they expand beyond 16, basically there's a new contract for the playoffs, and now Fox and CBS and NBC get to be part of that process, or at least bid to be part of that process. It's going to cost them a lot more. That's why they want to cap it where they want to cap it. This is all about money. There's nobody holy in this situation. There's nobody pure in this situation. It's just which one is worse? Of two terrible options, which one is worse? And right now, every option that Tony Petitti fights for is worse for the game and worse for college football. And that's why I'm so disappointed that Pete Bavacqua is just going along for the ride. And it drives me nuts.
It's so frustrating. And then you have like your Big Ten fans who just eat up the 10 conference games because they have a very convoluted idea of what their conference actually is.
Yes.
If I have to hear one more Big Ten homer talk about, well, we got to play on the road at Nebraska. It's like, what the heck does that mean? And like, they haven't had a ranked win in 10 years. That's not as big of a game as you think that it is. It's like, now we have to go out to the Coliseum. It's like, and one, that was by choice. You can't talk about that being an inconvenience. I'm sorry. The Big Ten has a very convoluted idea and really bad self-reflection of what type of conference they actually are, because you're not the SEC in that regard. You're not.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He told us to skip it, but I'll bring it up anyway because I do think it's good to address briefly. But Will Falk has this question:
would a 2014 playoff make it easier for Notre Dame to schedule other blue bloods or big brands?
I believe that's the talking point. I don't know that that'll necessarily come to fruition. What I think it guarantees is that teams that are on the schedule now would not fight to come off of it. But I don't know that it makes it easier to schedule those games. We get told a lot of lip service about what teams are going to do. But keep in mind, these are the same people that publicly advocate for rules and stricter enforcement until their school is then forced to follow those same rules. And then it's like, well, no. Our attorney general of the state is going to sue you. Like, you guys are the ones that said you wanted these things. And then when they create these rules and you all say you want these rules, and then you don't want to live by those rules if it means you actually have to live by those rules. These are the biggest bunch of morons. It blows my mind how so many people that are just this incompetent when it comes to just from a moral integrity and honesty standpoint get in these positions of authority in our country, from politics all the way down to sports, and it just grosses me out. It's really sad. Nobody means what they say anymore. Like it's become, and honestly, it's all our fault because we live on it. Like, look, Trev, I've had this conversation before. I had this conversation with somebody. In the state of Indiana, we had a major political earthquake here recently where 6 state senators were voted out lost in the primary, the Republican primary. And it was funny to listen to people and say, well, it's because of all that. I'm like, I don't know about you, but every Indiana person I know that voted in the primary got sick of all those commercials. We voted because of issues that we have with, property taxes, issues we have with a lot of different things that affect us on a daily basis. The lies that they've told us they're going to do this, but then they don't do that. I don't give a rip about stupid ads that don't tell us anything on TV, but it's like, we keep being told, but it's just the way that it is. Well, no, we voted as a state and said, no, we're not going to be okay with that anymore. And we're going to do something about it. And until we start doing that as a people, whether from a political standpoint, or in this case, a sports fan standpoint, until we just stop bending over and taking it, say, thank you, sir, may I have another, they're going to keep doing this. And we've made it okay for politicians to lie to us. We've made it okay for sports executives to lie to us. We've made it okay for sports coaches to lie to us. We just accept it as the cost of doing business. Well, guess what? When you tell them it's okay to lie, you know what they're going to do? They're going to keep freaking lying to us. And we're going to keep watching. So it's like this. Unless you're willing to not have Disney or not watch games or not do this, then stop crying about different aspects of it. And like, to a degree, we are in a catch-22 because this is our job. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I told people I'm not going to watch playoff games last year. Guess what? I didn't watch the live playoff games. I waited until they came out on those YouTube channels, those janky YouTube channels where they don't get any credit for it. But like, as long as we're still going to sit here and keep allowing them to do it, but yeah, I don't want to be inconvenienced, or I don't want sport to get taken away. Or I want to watch this. I want to do that. Then they're going to keep doing it. So we've said it's okay. And the reason we do that is because we're all mad at the other guy. Every Big Ten fan is crying about the SEC and crying about Notre Dame, but what they do is fine. And the SEC fans do the same thing. And the reason I brought up Indiana is until we're willing to look at our house and say, we're doing the bad thing now, and then demand better, then nothing changes. Everybody hates everyone else's politicians, but they keep voting for their own over and over and over again. That's why we keep getting the same people over and over and over again. And then people keep crying about it. It's hilarious when I watch these polls before midterm elections or elections, and you see these, what is the opinion of Congress? And it's always like in the teens of the 20%. And yet like 90-something% of incumbents win. And it's like, what are we doing here? Well, no, I like my guy. I just don't like the others. My guy's good. It's everybody else who's corrupt. We're not serious. We're just not. And as long as we continue to allow these coaches and execs to lie to us, as long as it benefits our team, then this is going to keep happening, because they're doing it because we keep watching. We keep paying to go to the games. That's why. So at some point in time, we just got to be like, look, this is happening because we allow it. If people stopped watching, guess what? They wouldn't be doing these things. But this is a very unpopular thing, but they're going to shove it down our throats anyway, because they don't care what we think, because they know we'll be pissed about it. We'll talk about it on podcasts. Fans will talk about it on Twitter. But guess what happens when the playoffs come? People are still going to watch. People are still going to go. People are still going to pay money for it. And then they're just going to take our complaints all the way to the bank. And they cash some big old checks. That's the reality of it. So they can say this is going to benefit this, but I'll believe it when I see it. But also, what a terrible, soft, non-competitive mindset it is that we'll only play tough games if we're guaranteed to be in a 2014 playoff. I'll say this, Trev. I was talking to a Notre Dame person the other day. I won't say who, but we were talking about the schedule, and the comment was made to me. I'd said something, and they misunderstood what I said. I was actually looking at it from a, earning a big win standpoint, and they said, "Well, we don't schedule thinking about what happens if we lose." And I respected the heck out of that. We're okay with getting those games because we're not scheduling to not lose. We want those big games. Now, can we maybe have them to where they're not back to back to start the season? Sure, we'd like that, but we're not worried about, well, what does this mean if you lose? But that's what we're seeing from so many of these coaches and ADs and stuff. Well, we're just going to schedule games that give us a better chance of winning, as opposed to, hey, I don't know, get better, recruit better, coach better, prepare better. It just really disgusts me. It's very sad.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. I'm with you. Super chat from Lil Meat Man. If Chris Ash has a good year and gets another gig, do you see any chance of Mickens being offered the DC job, or would he even want it? I can't speak on if he would want it or not. He wanted it when he was in South Bend and didn't even get the opportunity to interview for the job. Different conversation for a different day. But yeah, to answer your question, if Chris Ash gets another gig, is there a chance Mike Mickens gets offered? There's a chance that he goes through the interview process. I don't think Marcus Freeman or Pete Bavacqua would be doing their due diligence if they didn't go out and find, the best viable candidates. And one of the patterns that we've seen is, over the last couple defensive coordinator hires, they've liked to have seen NFL experience. Chris Ash spent time in the league. It wasn't as a coach. It was, as like a talent evaluator and working in the front office, but he came from the NFL. Al Golden was the linebackers coach with the Cincinnati Bengals before he came back. So that could increase Mike Mickens' chances of being the defensive backs coach in Baltimore. To maybe now that qualifies him for this position. I don't know. I'm just kind of reading tea leaves here. Nobody's told me. It's like Marcus Freeman wants NFL experience before you can be his defensive coordinator. I don't think it's that. But I think that the front office, I think the administration at Notre Dame would be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't at least look at Mike Mickens. But it's all up in the air.
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunately. I mean, look, the reality is that Marcus Freeman's had multiple opportunities to do things that to make it to where Mike Mickens was either going to be the DC or the co-DC, or to make it very clear to Mike Mickens that, hey, when this scenario arrives, you're going to be the guy, and he has failed to do so. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's a statement of fact. So the reality is I don't know that in any way Marcus Freeman believes that Mike Mickens is D coordinator material. He said it. He said, "Oh, he could be a great defensive coordinator," except for us. He didn't say the for us part. He did that by his actions. So, I mean, that's the facts of where we are. You can say all you want that you think Mike Mickens is a great defensive coordinator, could be a great defensive coordinator, but when you pass him over now twice, and really kind of three times, then other schools are not going to believe you when you say that. Well, he's not good enough for you then, clearly. You went out and hired a scout from the NFL to run your defense and not Mike Mickens. What does that tell us? Well, no, I think he's a great defense coordinator. Well, then why didn't you hire him? You hired a guy that hasn't been D coordinator in like 5 years. Why didn't you hire him? So, again, I'm not saying Marcus Freeman's wrong. For all we know, Marcus Freeman is right. That's not the point. It's just he doesn't view him as a defensive coordinator. And so if the job comes open, I don't see a world in which Marcus Freeman brings back Mike Mickens as the coordinator. Much as I would love it, I mean, I think Mike Mickens is a heck of a coach. He did a great job with the secondary, but I don't think that's something we're going to see. Just like he's not going to bring back Al Golden. Like, look, you had that. We're always looking to kind of redo that thing that we had, and Al Golden's not the only D coordinator that could ever be successful at Notre Dame. Go find the one that did that. That would be my key. Appreciate the greatness that he brought to the program. Same with Mike Mickens, Washington, Max Bulla. But we're always looking to, what about bringing back so-and-so? How about you just go find the best D coordinator that you can get in college football right now and go get that guy?
From ND87 NYU, Marcus Freeman said everything right about the decision by the players to skip the bowl game. However, do you think that decision played into his, quote, hopefully temporary discontent with being at Notre Dame?
No, I don't think the bowl decision had anything to do with that. From what I understand, I don't think it played into it. I don't know that Marcus Freeman wanted to do that. They were going to be a very different team. They were going to have a lot of guys sitting out. I think they were very disgusted with how it went out. And then you go on ESPN and help them get great TV ratings after they just screwed you over. I don't know that anybody really wanted to do that. I've heard so many things back and forth about the players did or didn't want it. And, it's hilarious how I'll get 3 emails from 3 different people with 3 very different stories about whether or not the players really wanted it. I've had parents of players that have been like, the players wanted no part of a bowl game. I've had another parent saying that they did want to play in the bowl game. Now, of course, the parent who didn't want to was from a starter. The one who didn't, not a starter. And then another person's like, oh yeah, the player, someone who didn't, wasn't a parent. Oh, the players wanted to play, but Pete Bavacqua said no. No, just no. Like here's what I know. Enough players didn't want to play in that game that I think it was very obvious that this wasn't the right thing. Now, did all the players feel that way? I don't think so. I think some probably wanted to play. But I just think that team was the team that had played at Stanford was not going to be the same. And I do believe the leadership of that team drove the decision. Now, do I think Pete Bavacqua didn't want to play in it? Probably. Do I think that Marcus Freeman wanted to coach in it? Probably not. But I don't think that played a huge role in it. I don't want to say it played none because I'm not inside Marcus Freeman's head. I don't have a personal relation with Marcus Freeman. I don't hang out with Marcus Freeman. I don't know how he ticks about things like this. But from what I'm told, he was not happy they were left out of the playoffs. And I don't know that he wanted to really be part of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I think they were ready to go into the offseason and start building this year's revenge tour. That's what I think.
Agreed completely. From Jason Rose, what has gotten into Steve Sarkisian? He just can't keep other teams, schools, and coaches out of his mouth. Give it a rest, dude. We'll add him to the filing cabinet of all the other coaches that I have questions about what's gotten into them and needing to keep their mouth shut and focusing on their own programs. I mean, look, realistically, there's only 3 coaches in my mind that currently can talk about the state of other programs, and that's Ryan Day, Kurt Cignetti, and Kirby Smart, because they've all won titles recently and in the recent past. I don't know why all of these coaches are banding together that have basically, when you add it all up in the grand scheme of football, have accomplished not a whole lot, are the ones running their mouths about other programs. I don't know why Lane Kiffin's talking about Ole Miss. I don't know why Pete Golding is talking about anything at all. I don't know why Steve Sarkisian is taking a shot at a team that's not on Texas's level. They're in the same state, but they play in a completely different conference. I don't know why these things are happening. It's just what I chalk it up to, guys, is it's that time in the offseason where college football is kind of in a dead period. There's no summer workouts. We're far enough away from fall camp that we can't really generate the buzz, and we're still over 100 days away from the season kicking off. But college football clicks have to come from somewhere. And this is that time of year when it's kind of like, when kids know, like in the month of April, when kids are going to school and they start acting out because they know that summer vacation is like kind of around the corner, but it's like not really. You still have like a month and a half left of school. That's kind of what coaches are doing right now. Starting to act out. They're starting to say ridiculous things. And Steve Sarkisian is just now the next guy in line with that.
College coaches are becoming very petty, childish group. And honestly, it makes me appreciate Marcus Freeman so much more every single day. I haven't watched the whole thing, but he recently did an interview with Josh Payton. Once I get past it's kind of BS. He'll do interviews like that, but won't even let anyone from the staff come on our podcast. Whatever, it is what it is. Once I get past that and watch the interview, you think, okay, I don't like the relationship Marcus Freeman has created with the Notre Dame media, but whatever, it is what it is. Take that aside, take your personal feelings aside, and just judge the coach. How would I feel about Marcus Freeman if I wasn't in this job and I was just a fan or a parent or somebody like that, a professor, an alum, an employee? You'd be quite proud of Marcus Freeman for the person he is, the way he runs his program, the things that he says, and the fact that it's all about Notre Dame. It's not about, let's take our little pot shots at Miami or Mario Cristobal or Kurt Signetti or wherever else. The closest we've ever seen to Marcus Freeman taking a shot at another coach is when he said, I Googled him and he's a pretty good coach before the playoff game against Indiana. Marcus Freeman could publicly talk and, take shots at James Franklin after they beat them. But he didn't do that. And you just reminded of, it's just nice having an adult running the program. It's just very nice having an adult running the program. And it is kind of sad to watch just this childish, petty, just constant shots and bickering. It's like, bro, you were just in the Big 12. And yeah, you won the Big 12 your last year, but you got your butt kicked the first 2 years. You couldn't even run the table in the Big 12 with your Texas team. It's just, I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of, are there no adults left in the room anywhere in college football anymore? It's really got me in a bad mood, Trev. I'm tired of it. I really am.
It's exhausting.
It is. It's just good, grow up, dude. I can't believe what recruiting has turned into. Well, maybe you should have 10 Lamborghinis, sitting around for players to walk through, and then you wonder why kids are always asking about handouts and this. I'm like, dude, oh God, I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. But it really does make you appreciate that we cover Notre Dame. And at the moment, now, if there comes a day where Marcus Freeman leaves and they hire one of these clowns, then obviously it won't be as much fun. But it is nice having a grown-up running the program that we cover and root for.
Yeah.
Because, and here's the sad thing is, if your coach says something that you back, but you'd hammer another coach if they said the same thing, then you're part of the problem. If Marcus Freeman took a shot like this, we're sitting in the chat, oh, this is so childish. But if Marcus Freeman does, oh, our coach is savage, our coach is great, our coach is the man. No, it's either childish or it's not. If it's childish when another coach does it, it's childish when your coach does it. But that's another problem that we have. It's we'll justify things being okay if our side does it, but when the other side does or the other team does it, oh, it's stupid, it's childish, it's petty. I think it'd be stupid and childish if Marcus Freeman did something like that. Because it's one thing to say something about another program. There's a time and a place where something happens and you've got to make your opinion of another program be known. And that's okay. I had no problem with what Dabo did regarding Ole Miss. None. Hey, here's what they did. They laid out the case. This isn't right. We're going to report them. This is what's up. But this stuff is not that. I kind of get why Sark took a shot at Ole Miss because of the history of Pete Golding. But even then, it was what did we say then? Dude, handle your business behind the scenes, bro. You don't need to get into these childish Twitter wars or podcast wars. And it used to be where coaches would say things like this, at an alumni dinner or a booster club, and it would stay kind of quiet or somebody would leak it. But now they're just out and saying it just for everybody to hear. And it's just kind of petty and childish. And it'd be just as petty and childish if Marcus Freeman says it. But I honestly don't worry about Marcus Freeman saying things like that. I'll criticize him if he does. But it doesn't even cross my mind that, I hope Marcus Freeman doesn't get into this, because that's not who he is. At least he's never shown himself to be that way. And just makes you appreciate the fact that we get to root for someone who truly still believes in doing things a certain way. We talk to recruits and they talk about, man, it's just a perfect example. Olubabola. Notre Dame did not think that visit went well because he just is not a real outgoing kid. He didn't give a ton of feedback. But you know what? We talked about this in show, Trev. You know what Olu did during that visit? He watched how Marcus Freeman interacted with everybody else. Not how much he came up to him and kissed his butt, but how he treated people and how and just that made a difference for him. And how many times have we heard that story coming from a recruit or a parent or somebody, people that don't know Marcus that come to the program, they're around the program for a day or two, and they always come out man, it's different here. This guy's different. And it's just nice being able to have something like that to root for. And I pray that he never changes because it's just nice having sort of that example to point to. Just hope it stays that way for a while.
100%. It's nice having a role model at the steering the ship.
Someone who's not just a childish, immature, just Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating.
From Moneybag Jake, can you guys please explain to me why the University of Spoiled Children talking heads think Notre Dame in any world would be afraid of them?
It's exactly what we've been talking about for the last half hour, Jake. It's just because people will say anything to make the program they look for and support better. And I'm to a degree sympathetic for it, because do y'all know the hell I take every time I say something negative about Notre Dame? Like, if I could show you some of the DMs and private messages and emails I've gotten from Notre Dame fans anytime I've ever criticized Notre Dame, I get it. Like, I get the desire to just always run cover for your team, because if the worst thing somebody calls you is a homer, you can live with that. But when you criticize the program you cover, people get personal, they get nasty. And you get threats, you get all this type of stuff. I mean, it's what I've had to deal with doing this job, and that's okay. I can take care of myself. But the point is, I can understand why some people who maybe don't have great thick skin, or just don't even have to deal with that stuff, say, I'm just a run cover for the team that I'm reporting on or covering. I get that. So, but that's all it is. It's just, this is the team that I cover. I want to have a good relationship with the coaches. I want them to be able to talk to me. They're only going to talk to me if I'm always, having their back, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm going to regurgitate the company line.
Yeah, I mean, flat out, it's cope.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that they have to fall back on. It's what it is. Notre Dame has beaten you now 3 years in a row, every single time by double digits. We've only beaten Notre Dame 4 times since 2010. You go and you look over on the FanDuel odds, and USC is 12 spots below them in favorites to win the national title. They're 12 spots below them in the best odds to make the college football playoffs. Their win total is set at 8.5, and that's plus odds, so they think they'll be under 8.5. Whereas Notre Dame's win total over under is set at 11.5. It's jealousy and it's cope.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that they can fall back on, because there's no football argument to say why that rivalry ended on USC's part. It's just it's anything that they're throwing against the wall to see if it sticks.
Yep. And you know why they do it? Because their fan base wants to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to not go on another rant, but that's why. Because they know that's ultimately what the fan base wants. We all want to be told everything is great as a group, and people do not react well when you tell them that what they think is wrong, or that they didn't understand something, or that they're wrong about something. I was having a Twitter conversation with some clown yesterday, Notre Dame fan, who didn't understand at all the point I made. The only person that didn't. And the moment I said you're wrong, it's just personal insults. That's how people are. Not everybody, a lot of people that way. And it's often the people that talk the most, not always, that are the most sensitive. Because then the minute you disagree with them, it's personal insults. And, that's just kind of how it is. But look, I don't think most of them believe that, Trey. I don't think most of them believe that about Notre Dame. But they know, number one, our fan base is going to eat it up. Number two, it's going to make the people that I'm trying to have good contacts with at USC happy. That's why they say it.
From J. Melvin, Brian, you've said before that you don't think Julian Sain is in the same tier as Darian Mensah, CJ Carr, Arch Manning, and Dante Moore. Why is that? Why is that he was a 5-star coming out of high school?
Yeah, I think you're misrepresenting what I've said. I had Julian Sain, I believe, as a top 5 quarterback for this season. So you've misrepresented what I've said in that regard. Trevor, I believe we both had Julian Sain as a top 5 quarterback. I've said I think he's overrated, because there's people that think he's like the number 1 quarterback and all that. I don't think he's a high NFL draft pick. I think he's a really good college quarterback. So, he wasn't a 5-star out of high school. I've said that I think CJ Carr was the better choice, because it was going to be Carr or Sain. If Notre Dame wanted Sain was going to come to Notre Dame. But they wanted CJ Carr instead. So you'll have to find me where I said he's not in the same tier as Darian Mensah. I definitely didn't say that. Now you can I don't think he's as physically gifted as CJ Carr, Arch Manning, and Dante Moore. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he's in the same tier, and I definitely didn't say he's not in the same tier as Darian Mensah. So I'm going to have to push back on that one a little bit. And I don't give a crap what his ranking was coming out of high school. That means nothing to me. DJ Uyunglele was the number 1 quarterback in the country coming out of high school. That means nothing to me.
From ICO5, if you had to pick one, who would you take, Kyle Hamilton or Xavier Watts? Oh.
Pick one for what? Are we talking about Notre Dame? We're going to, for this one, Trevor, we're going to go Notre Dame. I think this is kind of goes along with like a poll that somebody was talking about on our board today, and that they asked who was the better safety in college or in Notre Dame, and didn't even have Harris Smith on the list, which just invalidates that poll. I don't know who did the poll, but invalidates it to begin with. But Kyle Hamilton or Xavier Watts, I mean, my pick is Xavier Watts. Like, who's more talented, physically talented? It's Kyle Hamilton. There's no question. And Kyle Hamilton was a great player at Notre Dame when he played. But Kyle Hamilton was a rotation safety as a freshman, a stud in 2020, and then played half a year in 2021. That's it. I would argue that both of Xavier Watts' last 2 seasons were better than Kyle Hamilton's 2020 season. At the very least, you could say as good. Can we at least say it was as good? His 23 and 24 was at least as good as Kyle Hamilton's 2020 season, where he was great, by the way. But the difference is Xavier had 2 of those. Kyle had 1. At best, 1.5. And I don't think he was great in 2021. I think people will remember the highlight plays like that incredible interception against Florida State, but they forget some of the not great plays that he had that year as well. He was a great player, but he had a very short period of time. So you could put his 2020 season up against anybody else's best season, but Xavier Watts had a significantly better career than what Kyle Hamilton had. So, yeah, I don't see how you can vote for Kyle Hamilton over Xavier Watts. Now, you want to talk about who's going to be the better NFL player? Okay, we could have that conversation. You want to talk about who's the better NFL draft pick, who had the better physical talent? We could have all those conversations. And I would say this, if Kyle had played all of 2021, maybe we're having a different conversation then too, or if Kyle had maybe come back for a senior year. But at some point in time, it's hard for me to say that someone who played for a year and a half is better than someone who was a really good player for 3 years. I have a hard time with that. So, but here's the deal. They were both great players. We just got more of it from X. And here's the other thing. If Kyle would have played into his 5th year like Xavier did, this is not a debate. It would be Kyle. But we have to gauge it off of what we saw, not who we think was more talented or not who we think might have been better had circumstances been the same. I don't disagree with that. Kyle was a more physically gifted player, but he was at Notre Dame for 2.5 years. And you have to you have to evaluate him on what he did, not what you think he would have been based on whatever.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm picking Xavier Watts.
Thoughts on that, Trev? I know you have an opinion on this.
Yeah, I mean, and some might view this as unpopular. I'm picking Xavier Watts kind of by a country mile. I loved Kyle Hamilton. I love what he did, but he was more flashy. Xavier was more consistent. One was a consensus All-American. One was a unanimous All-American. One won the Bronco Nagurski Award. The other one didn't. And then the guy that won the Bronco Nagurski Award was a better football player the following season when he somehow didn't get voted as a unanimous All-American. Different conversation for a different day. And like with Kyle Hamilton, the thing that's so tough is like what a lot of people love about him, and I understand it. And I was this way at one point in time too. It's like he's a 6'4" safety, and it's like yeah, that struggled to stay healthy, like during his time at college. Kyle Hamilton was a phenomenal player. I loved Kyle Hamilton, so I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to downgrade or downplay what he did during his time at Notre Dame. But if I'm picking between the two, it's Xavier Watts 8 days of the week. That cat was special. And with Kyle Hamilton, it's also tough where it's like, depending on the argument or what the lens of the conversation is, some people are willing to talk about 2020 as an asterisk year because it was COVID. Some games got canceled. It was an abbreviated season. That doesn't take away from what Kyle Hamilton's play was.
Yeah. And he played 12 games that year.
Right. Like
and
that doesn't
including the playoffs. Like that was a full season for him.
Like, so that it was interesting to watch, but then like I watched Xavier Watts what Kyle Hamilton did in 2020. I watched Xavier Watts do that for 16 games.
Right.
And like it's just that's why to me that it's just not a comparison. But what's the comparison? It's comparing two great Notre Dame safeties.
Exactly.
That's where we're at.
Exactly. And it's just none of this is meant to disparage Kyle Hamilton, who's a great player at Notre Dame. It's just that when you're having these debates, you have to find a differentiator. Kyle Hamilton was great when he played at Notre Dame. He was great. He was a little more inconsistent in 2021 in year one of a new defense. Let's not forget that. A more complicated defense. Clark Lee's defense was very much we're going to line up, you're going to know what you're going to do, and you're going to play great football, and took advantage of guys like Kyle Hamilton, not need him to ask to do a lot because you could do so many things. And then he gets hurt halfway through the year. That season was a bit of a weird year for Notre Dame. And, Brian Kelly was having his little spats with the admin, which is why he left. There's all these reasons why Kyle didn't do it over as long a period of time. But the reality is Kyle was a great player at Notre Dame. Harrison Smith was a great player at Notre Dame. Alohi Gilman was a great player at Notre Dame. Xavier Watts was a great player at Notre Dame. But when I'm deciding between who was the best, I got to go with the guy that did it way more. And production matches, if not surpasses. I think Kyle was now, if you wanted to get into who was the better run defender between Kyle Hamilton or Xavier Watts. So, I mean, okay, that's Kyle Hamilton.
Without a doubt.
Who was the better pass defender? Xavier Watts. I mean, so we can have some of those debates. When you talk about all-around player and then just doing it for a longer period of time, it's hard not to go with X in that situation. It really is.
We're rolling here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag, and we've answered some really, really great questions so far today. You guys are bringing the heat, no doubt about it. Got one from Acupuncture. Do you think college football should go to a 10-game season if they implement a 2014 playoff? It would put weight back into the regular season, just as college football should be.
No. Whether they should do that or not is really irrelevant. They're not giving up They're not giving up two regular season games for a 2014 playoff. It's just not going to happen. They're going to give up the conference championship game for that, but they're not. My point, I said that recently. Okay, fine. You want to go to a 24 to 32 team playoff, then play the same number of games that FCS, D2, and D3 teams play, which is 10. FCS teams play, I think, 10 or 11. They play 11 now. But D2 and D3, they play 10. High school teams that play 14, 4 or 5 rounds of playoffs, they play 10 high school, regular season games. So, but they're not going to do that because, again, what's driving all of this? Money. And they're not going to give up revenue from games, those kind of games, to go do this. Why is there such a pushback against giving up the conference championship games? Seems like a no-brainer, right? Coaches don't want it. Players don't want it. So why do they still play them? Money. They make lots of money. That's it. Which is why they're not going to give up two regular season games. I wouldn't necessarily be super opposed to it. Just, hey, you know what? Play 10 games, go to a 48-team playoff, whatever. But I just think the whole thing is kind of dumb. Not what you're saying. I'm talking about the push for 24 and all that. That's what I'm referring to, Acupuncture. I'm not talking about your comment. I think your comment is super rational. You're thinking of, well, you're going to play 5 games in a row, and should you really? That's what was so funny about the AFC8 proposal. Let's play 17 games and get rid of buys. Okay, and then have the audacity claim we're looking out for the players. What? No, you're not. It just goes back to the whole thing, Trev. Just stop lying to us. Just tell us the truth. Just tell us the truth. Just be honest.
And the sad reality about going to a 10-game regular season is a lot of fans would say, for the SEC, like, don't schedule the Citadel the second week before of this. And, for Big Ten teams like Indiana and Penn State, it'll eliminate 2 of their really soft non-conference games. That's not what would happen. Those games would remain, and we would get less of the big marquee games because they'd be gearing up for the playoffs. That's what would happen. On paper as a fan, but yeah, get rid of those bad games, and it, inflates what the regular season is, and we have more big matchups on a week-to-week basis. But I'm here to tell you that's not what would happen. They would get rid of some of those bigger marquee games to keep some of the cupcakes on their schedule to prepare and give themselves a better opportunity to make a 2014 playoff. That's what would happen.
And teams, they'd have to pay less to come play. Mm-hmm. That's the other part of it. Got 2 back-to-back questions on this one, Trev. One on from IC50598. What are your thoughts on Ed Orgeron coming back to LSU coaching staff? Corey Dean also said, I read that Ed O is coming back to LSU to join Kiffin's staff. Is that true? And what do y'all think about it? It is true. All I'll say is this. It's a great hire for what Lane Kiffin is wanting that hire to be. I personally would not touch Ed Orgeron with the 10-foot pole. But I think you guys all know my stance on that and why. Ed Orgeron has been on podcasts lately bragging about how much he cheated as a recruiter. And people laughed and thought it was funny because he did it in a really goofy voice. He's a morally bankrupt person who is a great recruiter and a really good D-line coach. And so for someone who doesn't care about ethics whatsoever or the right thing or anything else, why wouldn't you want to hire Ed Orgeron? So, and he loves LSU. The dude loves LSU. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And they're friends. They've worked together before. So in all those ways, if you understand what the moral foundation is for and the priorities are for Lane Kiffin, this is actually a great hire. No matter what I think about it, it's a great hire for what he's looking for, how he wants to run his program, and what he's going to accomplish, because at the things he's going to be doing at LSU, he's great at those things. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we view it the same. Now there's also somebody on staff, too, that understands what it means to be a coach down in Baton Rouge.
Yep.
I mean, we certainly saw what that meant for Brian Kelly, and that what I'm sure was a very authentic accent at the time.
Yeah.
Of what that looks like. So that's another
family.
Dude, that's what a clown, dude.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's pretty funny. This is a good one.
From ICO5, out of all the national champions in the last 26 years, in your opinion, who are the top 3 to 5 out of that group? And what would a 12-team playoff look like with those teams if they were ranked?
That's a really good one, Trev. So who would I for sure put on my teams? I'd have to go 0-1 Miami. If I'm going to say who are the 12 teams, 0-1 Miami. I'm going to go 2004 USC. I would go 05 Texas. Said 12-team playoff, right? I'm going to go 05 Texas. I'm just kind of going through the years and picking up the best teams. 08 Florida. Would you agree that's the best of the 2 Florida champions under Urban, Trev?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to go 2012 Bama. I'm going to go 2013 Florida State. Let's see here. I'm going to go 24 I'm actually going to also put the 2002 Ohio State team on there. I think the 2014 team was more talented, but I think the 2012 team, I'm going to give them credit for that team actually maximized, or 2001-2 team, they maximized their talent and they beat a really good Miami team. I'm going to go 2018 Clemson.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 2019 LSU. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's see here. I'm going to go 22 Georgia. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Should we go like 2020 Bama? I have a hard time with because they were a great team, but I just feel like that COVID year was so funky that we really didn't get a chance to see anybody. But they dominated Notre Dame and dominated Ohio State. Do you think that just, I feel like we should have another Bama team on there. I don't know. Should it be 11? Should it be 09? Should it definitely not 17?
No.
But 15 Bama.
I'm torn between 15 Bama and 2020 Bama.
Okay. Give me your case for 2015 Bama over 2020. Because I'm kind of leaning that way as well, but just give me your case for that.
I think overall, I think you had a more balanced offense led by a star in Derrick Henry, because I think in 15, didn't they also have Calvin Ridley in 15?
I believe so.
I'll look at that.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. I think that was a more balanced offense, whereas almost the entire 2020 Bama offense was Devontae Smith, and it's not like that's a bad thing.
Right.
But I go and I look at the 2015 Alabama offense. You're talking obviously led by Derrick Henry, but they still had Kenyon Drake and Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough. Your receivers were Calvin Ridley. OJ Howard was a menace in the postseason. You had our Darius Stewart on there. Yeah, I would go that.
Kenyon
And then
Drake was your number
defensively,
2 back.
yep.
Yeah.
Defensively, your safeties were Eddie Jackson and Minka Fitzpatrick. You had Marlon Humphrey.
That D-line was unbelievable. Jonathan Allen, Tim Williams, Ryan Anderson on the edge, Ashawn Robinson.
Yeah, I'd go 2015 Bama.
Yep. Let's go 2015 Bama. See 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Does Indiana, this past year's Indiana team, belong on that one? Here's our options, obviously, Trev. We got we can go 2000 Oklahoma's definitely not on there for me. That was a heck of a year, but that's not an all-time great team. You've got 02 Ohio State we put on there, 03 LSU that split with 03 USC. I don't have either one of those on there. We have 04 USC on there. We have 05 Texas on there. We don't have 06 Florida, 07 LSU. We don't have 09 Bama. 2010 Auburn was a really good team. I don't know that they had an all-time great player. I don't know that they were an all-time great team. 11 Bama's not on there. 14 Ohio State's not on there. 16 Clemson's not on there. 17 Clemson's not, or Alabama's not on there. And we don't have 21 Georgia, 23 Michigan, because I don't put cheaters in there. Well, at least, cheaters in that regard in there. And then the last 2 12-team playoff winners. Who should be the 12th team in that conversation?
It's tough.
I almost feel like we should put 05 USC in that.
I mean, dude, I would argue, because it's the regular season definitely discredits it, but for who they were in the postseason, at 24 Ohio State, I think has an argument because they were so dominant. I would put 24 Ohio State in there above 25 Indiana. But I think Indiana played more of a complete season.
And I also I would argue that Indiana was just as dominant in the postseason as Ohio State was.
Yeah.
Because they both had one close game, right? Miami for Indiana and then Texas for Ohio State. They both won their first. The first playoff game was a blowout. Alabama for Indiana, Tennessee, Oregon for Ohio State. Ohio State played one more game. That kind of helped them a little bit too. They had to play one more game in the postseason than Indiana did.
You could argue Ohio State played more talented teams than what Indiana did.
That I think you could give them credit for. I think they played. I would argue 2024 Oregon was better than anybody that Indiana beat this year, and I think you could argue that 24 Notre Dame was just about as good as anybody they played this year. I think Miami is close to 24 Notre Dame. That version with no Riley Mills, with no Boubacar, with all the injuries. Yeah. I can't get past. Here, let me look this up real quick. Let me just remind myself of something real quick. I can't get past the 2 regular season losses. That's what I can't get past for them. I get where you're coming from, Trev, but I don't know that, like, Indiana also beat Oregon twice and they beat Ohio State. That's a tough one. Anybody else besides those 2 that you want to pound the table that belong in this conversation? What about you in the chat? Do both of those Georgia title teams belong? I don't. I think the 22 team.
Yeah, I think the 22 team does.
I don't know about 21.
That 2016 Clemson team was also very talented.
I just can't get past the fact they lost to flipping Pitt. Like, a lot of those teams had losses. I can't get past the loss to Pitt. We have 05 Texas already on there. What about any of the earlier teams? See, that's the tough, because you were a little young for some of those teams, those early 2000 teams.
Like, honestly, pre-09 Bama's title, it's tough for me to weigh in too heavily.
Yeah, and some of those teams were flawed. Like that LSU team lost 2 games. I can't put them on 07. I can't put them on there. Yeah. I'm gonna go. Oh boy, man. You know what? I'm gonna put a second Ohio State team on there, but I'm gonna go 2014 Ohio State. The team with Ezekiel, they went 14-1, whooped Bama, blew out Oregon. I'm gonna go with them. That's where I'm gonna go. So make an executive decision. So the question was, who are the top 3 to 5 of that group?
Well,
1A and 1B, Trev, I think we have already established. And we'll just go in order of when they won the title. We'll go Miami 1A, Miami from 2001, 1A, LSU from 19, 1B.
yeah.
You agree with that? After that, I mean, it's 05 Texas is in the conversation. 04 USC is in that conversation.
18 Clemson's in that conversation.
18 Clemson's in that conversation. 22 Georgia is in that conversation for me.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go 18 Clemson is in there.
Yep.
I'm gonna go 04 USC belongs in there.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go 05 Texas. The reason I'm leaving Georgia out of 2022 is because I still like the East was not great. I don't have as much respect for their regular season. When I'm splitting hairs between great teams, I don't think they played all that tough of a regular season schedule. They only played 2 ranked teams in the regular season. Neither were great. They beat a very mediocre LSU team in the SEC title game. And I really think Ohio State outplayed them in that game. I do. So again, splitting hairs, I'm going to go with 04 USC and 05 Texas. So that's just a tough one because both of those teams were really, really good. I mean, just so you can 04 USC, Trev, played number 2 Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl and beat them 55-19. That was Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Like, they were really good. They were really good. They beat number 15 Arizona State 45-7, beat number 7 Cal 23-17, beat Virginia Tech that year by 11, beat BYU on the road by 32. Like, they beat people pretty good. And a couple ugly games. But I'm going to put them – that's my list. And if I had to rank those 5, I'd put Clemson, 18 Clemson at 3. I'd put 05 Texas at 4. And I'd put 04 USC at 5. That's where I would go.
The FanDuel odds for that playoff would just be absolutely crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you were to rank like national title favorites, I mean, you would literally have to be, 01 Miami and 19 LSU would probably both be like minus 150.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson 18 would be at like plus 350. It'd be so close. I mean, that would be.
You know what we should do, Trev? We'll do this on the message board just so we have time. Trev and I are going to talk about this, and we're going to put our 12-team playoff bracket for these champions on the board and have some fun with it. Because now I want to do that, but I don't want to sit here and work through all that during the show. It'd make for really weird show and a really weird podcast. But yeah, we're going to do that on the message board. That'll be fun. Great idea, I really appreciate that. But start thinking about that, man. There's some really good teams during that stretch, and there's also some teams like that team would get smacked. Like if they went to a 24-team playoff in that era, like who'd be the one team left out of that era? That'd be an interesting question. Who would we leave out? So it's 26 teams, right? Who'd be the 2 we'd leave out? I'd leave out 07 LSU, and I'd strongly consider leaving out 17 Alabama. And then, because 23 Michigan, I get that everybody, but that team still beat Ohio State, still beat Alabama, and then beat Washington. So who would the 2 you'd leave out? That'd be a tough one. And then seed the 24. Like, there's some really good teams in there. And then you get into like some of the losers of titles that year. Some would be better than a lot of the title teams in other years. So that would be an interesting conversation. Those are some of my favorite type of off-season questions.
Mm-hmm.
They are fun. Really fun.
Super chat from Remington Jeans. Appreciate you. How important to recruiting is the new football facility?
Very. And that's Remington. That's based on the feedback we've gotten from recruits. I mean, they talk about, we've heard the word second to none used a bunch of times, state of the art, because the thing about it, and this is why it matters, it's not just a new cool building. One of the big things that I'm told that Notre Dame really focused on and putting this together was it being something that's going to be a place that is meant to be a supportive area for football players as well. So it's not just like a new locker room and new meeting rooms. There's going to obviously be the new cafeteria, the new eating place where they're going to actually have food made there. I heard there's going to be like a virtual reality room that isn't so they can go like play with lightsabers, but it's like to go there so they can like, get the best technology that virtual reality can provide for a quarterback or a player to kind of simulate certain things. There's going to be all types of different things that are going to be there for, health and wellness, like literally their physical health and wellness on top of the fact it's going to be a brand new cool facility. So a lot of it's geared towards how can we make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure our players have everything they need to physically, mentally, and all those other ways have the best things to make sure that they're becoming the best people, the best players they can be. So I think that's a big reason why it's been so impactful. Really big reason why.
Without a doubt. Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. Is there a program that would be viewed differently if they did not win the national championship minus the 2011 Auburn Tigers?
Wow. Is there a program that would be viewed different if they did not win the national championship? No, see, the reason I wouldn't go with Auburn is because I still remember days when Auburn had some really good teams. I still remember that undefeated Auburn team that had Jason Campbell when I think it was Terry Bowden was their coach, and they went undefeated. Obviously, vaguely as a kid, remember the Bo Jackson days. I remember the 13 Auburn team that played for the title. So I don't think they're like as fluky of a team. A team that I think would be different had they not, besides Indiana.
Yeah.
Who's yours?
Michigan.
Michigan, 23 Michigan.
Yeah. When you go and look at their overall record, if it wasn't for that title in 2023, they kind of were what Notre Dame was from like 17 to 21 if they don't win that title. Michigan's run in 21 to 23, it was, have some double-digit win seasons sprinkled in there, but them as a program, that title absolutely changed around how some people viewed Michigan because they were able to win it in the modern era. And this isn't even getting into the cheating scandal and what's happened to like half of the members of Jim Harbaugh's coaching staff post that season, because it's not a great story, believe me.
No, it's not. But
mine would be Michigan, because if it wasn't for that title, it's okay. You had that shared title in '97, and outside of that, it's been like
since World War II. They hadn't won an outright title since like the 40s.
Yeah, mine would be Michigan.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's a very good one. I'm trying to think through, because we've had a lot of the same teams that have won titles the last 30, 40 years. It's USC, Miami, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama. Here's one, Trev. Oklahoma, 2000 Oklahoma. They got a lot of credit for that 2000 season, when after that they had a lot more big game losses than they had big game wins. But we view that season, and if you remember correctly, Mark Richt had just gotten the Georgia job, so he was kind of doing split duties, and the offense was not prepared for that game. I think Florida State playing at their best for that game would have beat Oklahoma, but they clearly weren't at their best in that game. And I think that gave people an opinion of Oklahoma that I don't know that they earned. So I'll go Oklahoma. I like yours as well. I think the Michigan one makes sense. I'm just simply going with what's one from the past that also would fit in that category. I'm going to go 2000 Oklahoma.
I like that.
That's the Josh Heupel championship team. He was the quarterback on that team. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Super chat from Daily Comments. Appreciate you. The resident Miami fan in the chat. One of them. If they go to a 2014 format, which Daily Comments is against, would it make sense for some of the first round games to be at bowl sites like the Pop-Tarts, Gator Bowl, etc.?
No, I don't like that. I think what you're doing by having more teams is you have more validation to have two rounds of home games would make the most sense to me. I don't think adding smaller bowls like that makes a lot of sense. And if you were going to do it daily, I would put it into the second round. That's what I would do. But I think what you're going to see is if they go to 24, the push will be to have the first round games and the next round games be at home. And then you get into the quarters, semis, and championship games because there's going to be 5 rounds. So then the last 3 rounds are still tied into the orange, the peach, the sugar. But it's the rose, the orange, the peach, the sugar, the cotton. And I feel like there's one more that I'm forgetting.
The
Orange,
Fiesta.
It'll still be tied into those games. So, yeah, that's what we'll see. And then it's obviously 4 of those will be in the semis and then – or the 4 will be the quarters and then 2 of them for the semis. And then the championship game is a neutral, not in a bowl game. So I think that's what you would see. And I think it would make sense to have the first 2 rounds at home because it's going to be very difficult to ask fan bases to travel, every fan base to travel for 5 weeks or even 4 weeks. You already have enough fans that have to travel for the home games, but you at least have enough of a local fan base to be there. But then they've got 3 more weeks, 4 more weeks of travel. I don't think that'd make a ton of sense. And you definitely don't want to do it for 5 if you're going to make the first round games bowl games. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And if we're being honest, that creates a very sharp advantage to Southern teams because there just aren't many Northern bowls. They're probably not going to have the Motor City Bowl or like the Pinstripe Bowl be first round games. It would all be the ones in Texas and North Carolina and Florida and Georgia and stuff like that, which creates a huge advantage. So number 11 Notre Dame plays number 22 Georgia Tech in Georgia for a bowl game. How's that giving an advantage to the higher seed? So I think that would create a big issue as well. So I think the push will be for them to be home games, the first 2 rounds to be home games.
From Salty, next season will feature experienced young wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, and O-linemen. If so, how likely is it that Notre Dame will recruit a transfer quarterback if CJ Carr leaves for the NFL?
So, Salty, this is a fair question. I just don't think that whether or not they go and recruit a transfer quarterback is going to have anything to do with what's around the quarterback as much as it's going to have to do with the development of the quarterbacks on the current roster. That's really what I think it's going to be about. Do they feel like one of Blake Hebert, Noah Grubbs, or Teddy Gerard, or incoming freshman Champ Mons has the chops to be that guy? So I think that's more of their view than anything. The reason that Notre Dame went with CJ Carr in 25 instead of a portal transfer isn't because, hey, you were going to have, X number of returning starters in the offensive line. You were getting Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price back. You were going to be able to get Malachi Fields out of the portal. You had tight ends with experience. You had Jaden Greathouse and Jordan Faison coming back. You had a lot of guys on defense coming back. Like, those weren't reasons why. It was he's ready. And if he wasn't ready, they would have gone out and gotten a portal quarterback. So honestly, I think their goal is to go with a kid that's on the roster. But I also think that even with those issues, Notre Dame is in a win now mode every year. And if that means we talk about him a lot. Let's say Maryland has doesn't have a great year this year, but Malik Washington is what you and I think he is. And you go through the year, you're just, man, Blake Hebert's not the guy. We're not sure about Noah. We're not sure if Teddy's ready. We're just not sure if they're ready to be the guy. Okay, what do you want? A year of Malik Washington, or do you want, and then maybe he bridges the gap, and then maybe the next year Noah or Teddy's ready, or Champ is ready to take over? I think that would be more of the direction they would go, is because they don't think those quarterbacks are ready. Now, their readiness, and this is where Salty's question comes into play, their readiness could be impacted by what's around them, right? Like, well, we don't need him to carry the team the way that CJ had to carry the team in 26 because we return, 4 offensive linemen, all of our tight ends, everybody except Greathouse and Faison at receiver, all of our running backs, that kind of thing. So I get that, but I think it really is going to come down to, are they ready or not? I think that's what that'll determine whether or not they go to the portal for a quarterback.
Yeah, that'll be one of the interesting things that we watch with Gino Guidugli, because on top of getting CJ Carr to that next level, there's a reason why you asked Teddy Gerard to reclassify. There's a reason why the spring battle was so competitive. And then you have to factor in Champ Mons will hopefully also be an early enrollee in 2027 as well. So a lot of things on the table for Coach Guidugli.
Yeah, agree. We'll go with this one because it's kind of along the same lines.
For a team with annual stacking of elite recruits at all offensive positions, a homegrown first-year starting quarterback could be limiting. Should the offensive coordinator feature the run game that season?
The problem with this kind of submission, Salty, is there's some understandable questions here, but we're speaking in generalities, and when speaking in generalities, there's no context. Who is the quarterback we're referring to here? Is he a true freshman? Is he a redshirt freshman? Is he a redshirt sophomore? Is the strength of your team your receivers or your quarterbacks? So, like, if we're talking about a first-year starter in 2025 at Notre Dame, yeah, you're going to run the ball more. If you're talking about a first-year starter in 2026, maybe 2027, the personnel may lead to something different. There's too many variables. What are the strengths of the personnel around the quarterback? What's that quarterback's strengths? How advanced is that young quarterback? There's been Jameis Winston was this quarterback in 2013. He was the first-year starter, redshirt freshman. And remember, that was back when they couldn't play a snap without losing eligibility. And Jameis Winston went out that next year and absolutely tore up college football that year and won the Heisman Trophy. Tim Tebow was a first-year starting quarterback in 2007 and went out and won the Heisman. Now, he played off the bench a little bit in 2006 when they won the title. He came in and ran and things like that, but he wasn't that's not a whole lot different than what quarterbacks can do now playing 4 games. But Jameis Winston played 0 games. He goes out and throws for over 4,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and leads them to a championship. Michael Vick in 1999 came in as a first-year starter, redshirt freshman, had never played a snap of football, and led Virginia Tech to a tremendous season and went and played for the championship. The answer to that's going to be different than if we're talking about a guy that's on the same level as a first-year starter in Ian Book. When Ian Book first took over, if he'd have taken over like 17 or Brandon Wimbush. So it just depends on who the quarterback is. What's his level of experience? What's his level of talent? And what are the strengths of the players around him? So there's really no answer that I can give you that's going to allow for the context. But I would say, in theory, in general, of what we assume is the case, more often than not, you're going to want to have a strong run game to support a first-year starting quarterback.
Agree completely. And even within that, the run game could potentially look different depending on who wins the job. If it's Blake Hebert, you could see an offense that resembles 2024 more than it did 2025. You could see what we thought the Tyler Buckner offense would have looked like at Notre Dame. So to Brian's point, there's a lot of different factors that go in here. I'm with you.
I just want to respond to something too that my guy Chris said, Black Irish just said. He said, but Brian, when Notre Dame played Georgia Tech in the Benz, there's as many Notre Dame fans as Georgia Tech fans. I'm not so much worried about the fans in the stands. It'll be split in that situation. I'm worried about Georgia Tech gets to drive 15 minutes to the game from their normal campus, and Notre Dame's got to hop on a flight and fly down to Atlanta and be there for a couple of days preparing for that game in Atlanta. That's more of what I'm referring to. It's not so much the stands. It's like, okay, so you got to go play this team that has to get on a bus and drive for an hour the day of the game to play the game, compared to a team that's got to fly from Northern Indiana or Columbus, Ohio, or East Lansing or Happy Valley or whatever else. That's more of what I'm referring to. The higher seeded teams, fans have to travel from further to get down to that game. So now it's costing them more than it's almost in that situation. It's better for you as a fan to be a fan of the number 22 team because it's right there. I don't have to go anywhere, than it is to be a fan of the team that's ranked higher, because most fan bases are generally located where the team is. Notre Dame is a little bit different in that regard, but let's say it's Ohio State in this situation and not Notre Dame. Ohio State will have plenty of fans in the seats, but it's going to cost their fans a whole lot more money, and you're basically punishing them for being the higher ranked team. So that's why I think because most of the bowl games are so far away in the South, you now are penalizing northern teams, unless you created some scenario where, okay, you could have this bowl game is optional and the higher seeded teams get first bid at whatever, and you've got X number of northern and southern and western bowl games or whatever. But even then, it just makes more sense to have them on campus for the first couple rounds. It just makes way more sense. And if you are concerned about money, it would make more sense for only for the NCAA or for the playoff committee to only have to pay for one of the teams to travel instead of both of the teams to travel. So that was more of my concern. I just want to make sure we're clear. I'm not worried about the number of the fans in the stands. Indiana to play Miami at Miami. There were plenty of Indiana fans in the championship game. But it's more so, and I don't think that's unfair because Miami had to win 3 games to get there. I'm just saying you definitely don't do that for the first round games. So good questions. Here we go. Let's keep rocking and rolling.
From Iden Benami, Rodney Dunham versus Will Black one-on-one in a game setting. Who you got?
It's a draw. I mean, look, Rodney's going to win some. Will Black's going to win some. They're both exceptionally talented players. That's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's also true. They're both. When you got 2 elite talents, one guy's going to win some, the other guy's going to win some. That's what you love about it.
100%.
I'd be more worried if I had a clear, oh, it's so-and-so. It's Will Black easily, or Rodney Dunham easily. Is the other guy not that good? It's a little bit of a both and.
Agreed. From Mick Small, do you think Autry Denson's career rushing record will ever be broken with the way Notre Dame is successfully recruiting the position and not needing freshmen to play right away?
That's a great question. I mean, it certainly makes it tougher. And nowadays, Trev, running backs don't stay that long. You know, they don't stay. You're not going to see a guy go through, 3 years of being 1,000+ yard runner unless he's just not a great player. It's going to be hard to do.
It's also just not the style of the game anymore. I mean, it's more and more and more offenses are going to having a more of a by committee approach at running back. It's not so much that you see just one primary ball carrier for 2 to 3 years consecutively. It's, you'd like to rotate in scat backs and receiving backs, and you have power backs. And it's that more than anything, I think, would make it the most difficult because even in a season where Audric Estime had 18 rushing touchdowns and was the bell cow in terms of carries, they still rotated in Jadarian and Jabron and Jeremiah Love. So that's what makes it difficult.
So let's just say that's definitely part of it, Trev. Let's take someone like Jeremiah Love, who I think you and I both agree, if he would have stayed for 4 years, even with the rotation, everything is the same. Him and Jadarian both come back. He only has to rush for 1,437 yards next year to break the record. That means he has to repeat the great year he had this year, plus gain another about 100 yards in the playoffs. And if they play a couple playoff games, like no brainer, that's going to happen. But because of all the success he had to get to the point where he is within striking distance for a senior year, he's not going to stay for a senior year to put up those numbers because there's just more of a less tread on the tires is better when evaluating in the NFL. That's also where I think the game has changed a little bit too. So, I mean, you look at a guy like Derrick Henry who had a 2,000-yard season, Trev, at Alabama, and Derrick Henry wouldn't have come close to Autry Denson's record. He was about 700-800 yards short of Autry Denson's record. Would have easily broken it if he came back for the next year if he was at Notre Dame. But it's, again, once you have that breakout season, you're a junior, you're out. So I think the only way it could happen, here's the only way it could happen. And so part of your comment, I think, also speaks to why it's going to be difficult, but also speaks to why I think it's still possible. There's a world in which a kid comes in as a freshman at Notre Dame and starts and plays 3 years and averages 1,440 yards a year and breaks the record. Maybe rushes for 1,100 one year, 1,500 the next year, and then 1,700 this junior year. That's possible. That's doable. It would have to be that scenario, in my opinion, for a guy to break the record where he just comes in and he's the guy as a true freshman, not a redshirt freshman, because, again, he won't be here past his redshirt sophomore year. But as a true freshman comes in, it would have to be a scenario where, let's just look at like the current class, the incoming class. So Aeneas comes in this year, starts, and then Lathan Wissington shows up next year. Aeneas goes pro. Lathan wins the job. And I'm not even saying he's going to, I'm just making a point. Then in that world, could he do that? Of course. But in reality, Lathan has to beat out Kedron Young, Nolan James, Javion Osborne, and Jonas Walton, and Isaiah Rodgers to become that number one bell cow back. And that goes all the way back to Trevor's point. Even if that guy does come in and is the guy as a freshman, what are the odds he gets enough of a bulk of the carries to put up the kind of numbers to get himself on that rate? Because if he doesn't put up 1,200 as a freshman, he's going to need insane numbers as a sophomore and a junior to break that record. And that goes back to Trevor's point of you just don't see that one guy being the guy the same way in today's game. And some of the backs we've seen that have been that, they were bigger backs or, like Derrick Henry, but then there's been some other, Jonathan Taylor's a pretty thick back. J.K. Dobbins did it, but we just don't see that as much anymore in today's game. So it'd be fun to watch, but no, I don't think we're going to see that.
No, I don't either. They'd have to
Playing
average
a lot more games helps too, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
16 games a year. Sorry, go ahead.
They would have to average 14.39 a year if they start as a true freshman
to tie the record. Yeah. Yep. All right, let's go to let's see here. Let's go Jay Melvin.
Brian, would you ever consider doing a podcast once a month about life, politics, or religion? I'd love to watch it and hear what you'd have to say.
I would be very interested in doing that, but I'll probably never do that. The problem is this, Trevor, is two of those three are very polarizing topics to where, so most people know that I'm pretty conservative in my political views, but apparently not everyone has caught the hints that I've dropped over the years. I'm not ashamed of it, but this just isn't a political show. I had a guy one time, I made one tweet on a political topic, and the guy was like, I'm never listening to your show again. It's bad enough that Vince D'Addario wears a Hillsdale shirt. And I was like, what is it? He's like, he should have convinced his son not to go there. What? He should have convinced his son not to go play at a school that is conservative and take a scholarship because you don't like their politics. Like, okay, bro, I don't care if you watch my show or not. Guy said he won't ever watch our show again. The reality is that if I did something on a completely separate channel, started my own Brian Driscoll channel, and I talked about those topics, the reality is it would hurt this business. And I don't view myself as I don't have the desire, the passion, or the knowledge for some of those topics as I do this. This is also more of a unifying type of conversation where if certain people find out that I'm doing a show and I give my honest opinion about politics or religion, which I have no problem doing. If people want to ask me my opinion at tailgate, I'll talk to you about it. Trevor and I talk about politics and religion and life all the time. I'm not ashamed of it, but I'm also someone who says, I don't want to hear about your politics on a sports channel. Now, I will admit I skirt the line sometimes with certain things, but it's usually as an example or if I'm on a rant. But we don't sit there, we don't tell people who to vote for, what I'm voting for, whatever the case may be, because the reality is there's Democrats that watch this channel, there's Republicans who watch this channel, there's independents who watch this channel, there's passionate political people that watch this channel, and people don't give a rip that watch this channel. There's Catholics that watch this channel, Protestants, atheists, agnostics, all of that stuff. And so like now I will share my faith with people. And we've talked about that. We've prayed on this show. And I don't mind sharing that, but it's not even the religious part that I'd have a problem with. I just don't know that I'm qualified to necessarily do that. And there's already better people in this sphere for that. It's the political part that would be more of the problem one. We talk about my life and our lives on the show. We're very open with people. I don't debate religion on the show, but I'm open about my faith. The politics one is where it would be very, very problematic to have those topics on this show. Even just saying I voted for such and such is going to get some people to get pissed off and not watch the show, which is sad and says more about them than it does me. But it also is I try not to be a hypocrite, and I don't want to hear about a sportscaster's politics. I don't care what Marcus Freeman's politics are. I don't care what Jeremiah Love or CJ Carr's politics are. I don't care. I care about what you do on the football field, and I don't watch ESPN for politics. That's why I stopped watching ESPN. So then I'm going to go start my own channel and talk politics all the time. Like, that would make me hit. Well, but I'm right. They think they're right. This is a Notre Dame football channel. And we already kind of toe that line enough with our talking about our lives and my faith. I'll never not talk about my faith. If me talking about my faith causes you to not watch, then you cannot watch. Politics is a different conversation. I don't think that's something that I want to divide the fan base over. We can have a conversation over here, and there's been times where I've made that very clear. I during the COVID stuff, I was very open and honest about my feelings on that. But why? Because it was impacting this realm. Outside of that, it's just, man, I just don't think it would be a healthy conversation. If I shared my conservative views, someone who's on the left is not going to be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense, I'm going to come around. No, they're just going to get mad and change. And if let's just say Trevor had, well, I do know this. There are people that work for me that have very different political views than me. And if they started sharing their political views on their shows or segments they were on, then that would inflame people on the right. And it would just create these issues that I don't think belong on a show about Notre Dame football. So unless it has to specifically to do with sports or more of a vague, hey, Congress sucks, they're not going to fix this problem, I think people of both parties should be able to agree to that. That's why I don't really do those things and talk about those things. So, and no, I'm not Catholic. Somebody has asked me that before. If I was going to do a show, you know what? If I did a different channel, you know, I would probably talk about religion. That would be something that I would consider doing. But the other fun one that Trev and I may do someday is a cooking show, because we both love to cook. That'd be fun. I've thought about doing that before, like just sharing recipes. I've thought about doing something like that on the non-discussion board at Irish Breakdown. Like, hey, put your favorite recipes of your favorite foods in here. We are going to start a Bible study on the message board, on the non-discussion board. We're going to start that. A lot of people wanted to do that, cool. Things like that. So those things I don't have a problem with. But the politics thing that's just so divisive. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, or you support Trump or don't support Trump, or support Biden or don't support Biden. That has nothing to do with whether or not we agree on Notre Dame football or we share a similar passion about Notre Dame football. And bringing that stuff in is only going to create less division and unity, and it just creates problems that I'd rather not deal with in this platform. Is that fair?
Absolutely, it's fair. If I were to start a different one, it'd be one about food. I would do a podcast on movies.
Yeah, like, that'd be fun.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Like, do movie reviews?
Thoughts. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And Trevor, you'd be a lot better. I would be the guy that would be on with you as the co-host who talks about the fun aspects of it. You look at movies so much more differently. Like, I look at movies as entertainment. You start talking about things, I'm like, dude, this guy's like a movie. Like, he should be doing like a movie, like, critique thing. He's starting. I mean, I didn't even think about that. Did I have fun or not? You know, like, you'd be really good at that. You'd be really good at that.
Would be fun. I appreciate you.
Yeah, that'd be fun. All right. Okay. Let's go to, do we have any? No super chats popped up. Let's get down to some more questions here, Trev.
Friday Free-For-All Mailbag happening right here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got another question up. Keep us rolling here. From Jay Melvin. Brian, do you think the standard of being the Notre Dame coach has been elevated? Let's say, hypothetically, Coach Marcus Freeman leaves in a few years. Notre Dame will not settle with mediocrity again like the BK regime and before.
Well, let's be clear. I don't like doing a revisionist history, even if it means that I point out things that I supported that I no longer support. I absolutely supported Brian Kelly being the head coach at Notre Dame when he was hired in 2010. And I defended Brian Kelly for the first several years of his career. So even in some of those down years, I was always, well, don't worry. Once he gets this going, he's going to get here. You can absolutely find articles or message board posts way back in 2009, 2010, 2011, where I defended Brian Kelly. Obviously, I eventually changed my view as I was around the team more, learned more things, and saw that he became, what he was. Because I don't think he was the same person, but I don't think he had the same fire to grow at Notre Dame the way he did at Cincinnati and different places, because those were always more short term. Central Michigan was always a means to getting to that next level, which is what Cincinnati was, which is a means to get to Notre Dame. So I don't think BK was settling at all. I think that at the time was a great hire. I think it made a lot of sense. I think it was a strong hire. I think Brian Kelly had attributes that I think could have won at Notre Dame if his own ego could have got out of the way. So I don't think Brian Kelly was hired. He was the big name at that time. So now, if you want to point out to what his tenure became, okay, that's a different question. You don't want a guy like that. But I don't want to be that guy that pretends like, you never hire another Brian Kelly. I would never support. I did. And I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't. But he was the big name in coaching, and they took their shot. And there's a lot of good things that happened during Brian Kelly's tenure. To your point, Trevor, he was significantly better than the three guys that came before him. Significantly so. He just wasn't as good as he should have been and could have been. That's the argument.
Yeah, without a doubt. This goes back to what Stiers and I were talking about on the radio show yesterday. The big picture standard at Notre Dame has never changed. Whether that was Lou Holtz or Bob Davie or Ty Willingham or Charlie Weiss or Brian Kelly or Marcus Freeman.
Faust, right.
Exactly. One of the reasons why we love Marcus Freeman is because he is living closest to that standard, to what Lou Holtz did, to what Ara Parseghian did, to what Frank Leahy did, to what Dan Devine did. And the coaches that came in between Lou Holtz and Marcus Freeman didn't, to varying degrees. Obviously, Brian Kelly was closer to living up to that standard than what Bob Davie did, and so, but the standard at Notre Dame has never changed. Marcus Freeman never elevated the standard. Brian Kelly never elevated the standard. It's about who comes closest to living up to that standard. That's why we love Marcus Freeman. So whoever Notre Dame hires as their head coach, whether it's Marcus Freeman leaves for the NFL or he's at Notre Dame for 20 years and then retires, whoever replaces him has to be able to live up to the standard of what it means to be at Notre Dame, not what his predecessor did. That's the biggest thing with Notre Dame, in my opinion.
Agree.
From Salty, if the Briles hire is not the answer for South Carolina, will Shane Beamer keep his job at the end of the season?
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, Trev.
We were. Basically, the general census between Brian and I, we think Briles is kind of living off of what his dad did as a play caller. But I think there's going to be a lot of different ingredients as to why Shane Beamer might not potentially still have a job at the end of the season. Is the offense one of them? Is hiring Briles as your offensive coordinator one of those? Yeah, because you have an immense amount of talent on that side of the ball. Nick Harbour is one of the most physically gifted wide receivers in the country.
Sure.
Yeah. Lenora Sellers is, you could argue, one of the most physically gifted players in the country. Not one of the best quarterbacks. That is something I'll die on that hill on. But physically gifted, yeah, so they have to be able to turn around that offense. But it's, at the end of the day, the buck stops with Shane Beamer. And if he's not able to keep his composure on the sidelines, and if he's not able to formulate an organized practice, none of that will matter who the offensive coordinator is or not.
If that hire works out, I think you might get another year out of Shane Beamer. But but to his question, if that is not the answer, then yes, I think Shane Beamer's done at the end of the year. Because they won't be a 9+ win team. They won't make the bounce back that they need to make. Along those same lines, Trev, here's another one from Salty. He says, what are the chances that Dave Aranda at Baylor keeps his job at the end of the season?
I don't like to put too much weight on like one specific player hanging a coach's job in the balance. But DJ Lagway, but with that being said, DJ Lagway is going to go a very long way in Dave Aranda keeping his job at Baylor, because that program has underperformed, and they're shades of what they were back in like the mid-20 teens with guys like Bryce Petty and the Coleman kid at wide receiver, where they were just scoring like points a game, what felt like every single Saturday. So what are the chances he keeps his job at the end of the season? Ask me again in October when I've had a chance to see what DJ Lagway is doing for the Bears.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's how good is DJ Lagway? Does DJ Lagway start living up to the high prep billing that we saw from him in high school? And then can he stay healthy? mean, that's the other big thing, Travis. This is a guy that's been kind of dealing with injuries since he got to Baylor. What's interesting, too, is even if he's really good, that may still be a problem because the reality is, Trevor's, their offense was pretty good last year. Spencer Robertson is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country last year. He was a good quarterback. Sawyer Robinson, sorry. He passed for 3,600 yards, 31 touchdowns, 12 picks, rushed for 3 touchdowns. Like, they weren't exactly inept on offense last year. A big problem they had is their defense was really bad and their offensive line wasn't great, but they gave up 32.6 points per game. They lost games when they, just because they couldn't. I mean, they beat SMU 48-45. Auburn, I still had one of the dumbest. I'll still never get over it. Trevor, I remember I texted you at the time. I was like, "You're watching this game?" And I'm like, "I just saw the dumbest goal line play calling sequence of my life." It's really going to come down to their defense has got to get better. I mean, it's got to get better. You give up 32 points a game next year, I don't care how good DJ Lagway is. You're still going to underachieve in what you and I believe is going to be a little bit of a deeper Big 12 this season than it was last season. I think there's talent on offense. They've got some good players coming back. They got a couple good portal pickups, on the offensive line, and they've got a couple guys coming back. It's really going to come down to their defense. They lost a lot off their defense. They brought in a lot of guys as well. We'll see if he knows how to put all that together. But I think that's the bigger issue is that. But is DJ Lagway talented enough that he can kind of rise them above? He is, because Sawyer Robertson could run the offense and put up numbers, but he wasn't a kid that was going to put the team on his shoulders and say, let's go do this thing. I do think if DJ can stay healthy, he's that good. Do I think he was a top 5 national player the way that people made him out to be? No. Do I think he's a really talented player? Yes, I do. And I think he's someone who's capable of elevating that team if he can stay healthy and he has the right mindset. I hope that this last year was a humbling one for DJ. And the fact that I don't think he quite got the attention from schools that he thought he was going to get. And maybe that his dad thought he was going to get. Hopefully this is something that kind of wakes him up and they take this a little bit, this opportunity to really grow his game and find some humility and say, hey, how can I get to become the player I'm capable of being? I hope it becomes that for him.
Unfortunately, our friends over at FanDuel aren't too high on what Baylor could potentially do this season. Their over-under win total is set at 6.5, and they have worse odds to win the conference than Kansas and Oklahoma State as of right now.
Yep.
From Joseph Barrett, BDRISS, Beedris.
I think that's, I think he meant to put a K at the end of that.
Gotcha. Was Bob Davie a good defensive coordinator? Let's put aside his head coaching record and off-field machinations.
Yeah, he was good. I don't think he was a great D coordinator, but he was a good D coordinator. He was the D coordinator for R.C. Slocum at Texas A&M. What's funny is the 2 A&M teams that Notre Dame beat in 1992, at the end of the 1992 and the 1993 seasons, Bob Davie was the defensive coordinator for those teams. And so Coach Holt saw up close and personal like how big and physical those teams were. So, yes, he was a good defensive coordinator. Was he a great defensive coordinator? No, he wasn't great, but he was good. No question, he was good. He just couldn't run a program the way you needed to. And because he had more of that gruff defensive coordinator mentality. And I don't know that was great for the program. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I know it's a little bit before your time, Trev, but you'd have thought the same thing.
I know. The only thing I know about Bob Davie is, didn't he have like an insane staff? He had like Charlie Strong and Urban Meyer.
Great staff. Oh, had a great staff. Yeah. Here, let's see if we can find the Notre Dame 1998 coaching staff. Let's see here if we can find it. No, he had some really good staff. He had hired Jim Coletto, who's had a really good reputation. He had Joe Moore on his first couple staffs, but he ended up firing Joe Moore. Got sued for it. He had Greg Madison on that staff as his D coordinator, Charlie Strong, Urban Meyer. He had some really good staffs. Really good staffs.
That ain't bad.
Yeah. Anyways, they almost always had really good special teams as well. Notre Dame did under his tenure, but he was really good at finding those like under the radar recruits. But then like a lot of the big name recruits just never panned out to the degree because he wasn't a great developer, in my opinion. But yeah, he was a good defensive coordinator, and they had good special teams.
But we didn't get that last question from We're Happily Independent. From We Are Happily Independent. I have heard rumors that Cam is doing the right things and should, or at least could be in a rotation. Is this true, or are they pulling our leg?
Well, you should have heard that on our show as well. We Were Happily Independent. We've talked about that also. I think what Cam did is he absolutely gave himself a chance to, with a strong summer and fall camp, he's got to build on what he did this spring. If he can build on what he did this spring, then I think he has an opportunity to play this year, yes. But he can't just be where he is. He's ascending, and he's got to keep ascending. And if he can do that, he'll definitely have a chance to help this year.
Agreed. From J. Melvin, Brian, are both Mario Cristobal and Lane Kiffin the two coaches that won you over the most this past year, and who are you more higher on in this upcoming year?
I'd have to think about if there's anybody else, but yes, they both proved a lot to me this year with their coaching jobs. Yes, they did. I still think Mario has to, like Marcus Freeman, has to prove, like, you got to avoid those, what the heck was that, losses, but then he got to the big stage. Marcus Freeman loses to Northern Illinois, but when he got to the big stage, they beat Indiana, beat Georgia, beat Penn State. Same thing with Mario. Like, how do you lose to SMU, and how do you beat Notre Dame, beat Ole Miss, beat A&M on the road, and take Indiana to the wire, and then lose at home to Louisville and lose to SMU in a game where you got kind of outplayed thoroughly for most of those games?
That coach for me this year, and I'll eat a little bit of crow on it, it's Curt Cignetti. I thought he was a good coach at Indiana, but the whole, like, we beat the you-know-what out of ranked teams, and it's like out of his 1 year at Indiana, it's like, well, I watched you play 2 ranked teams this year, and they took you to the woodshed in 2024. And he won me over with what that team was this upcoming season. Took them all the way to the championship, obviously won it. And Mario Cristobal's on that list for me. That's for sure, too.
Lane Kiffin has developed a level of steadiness at Ole Miss that I didn't think he could do. Even though I'd still say his 2014 was very disappointing. With all the talent they had on that 2014, they had no business being 9-3.
Agreed.
So to a degree, he's on there, but I don't think he proved as much to me as what Mario did.
From Jay Melvin, On3 came out with their top 100 players list the other day. I know you have strong opinions on this, Brian. Take off.
Not doing it, brother. It's just, it was so dumb. It's not even worth talking about. And it's not even about just Notre Dame players. There's a lot of dumb stuff. Sam Levitt, number 8. Trinidad Chambliss, 45. Really? Okay. Whatever you say, buddy. It was a really stupid list.
Agreed.
So, and here's another question about this from Spencer, who's also a Miami fan. We have now 3 Miami fans that are somewhat regulars in the show, so we appreciate y'all. But here's another one on that, and I'll answer this. I'm just not going to go off on it. I'm not even – Trevor and I texted about it yesterday. It's a dumb list. I've laughed at it enough. I called him out on X. I'm not going to give him a whole lot more oxygen than that.
Agreed. Yep, agreed completely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought that you were saying that in response.
No. I was just saying, like, I'm going to answer this, but I'm not going to go beyond answering these questions because I just don't want to.
So from Spencer, what do you think is the reason for why On3 has Levitt as a top 10 player and Carr is almost outside of the top 100? Levitt's scramble ability makes it a debate, but CJ has a slight edge overall.
I don't even think it's a slight edge overall. I pointed these stats out on X yesterday, Trev. Yeah, he can scramble. That's great. If you just look at their redshirt freshman seasons, I don't think it was overly close. You have to think, number one, he's doing what he's doing against the Big 12, right? And he's had a couple games here and there, but actually, I've got his numbers here. Let me pull up his numbers here real quick, Trev. Because I broke this down yesterday. But I think even if you take his best season, which was his redshirt freshman year, compared to Notre Dame's, I don't think that they're overly close. So I can find this here real quick. It's harder to find comments, but I want to find this one here real quick. Because I broke down here we go. So as redshirt freshman, CJ Carr had a 66.6% completion rate. Levitt was 61.7%. CJ averaged 228.4 yards per game. Sam Levitt was 221.9. And that's also keeping in mind that CJ Carr played a lot fewer second halves than what Sam Levitt did. CJ Carr averaged 9.4 yards per attempt and 14.1 yards per completion. Sam Levitt was 8.2, 13.4. CJ had a passer rating of 168.06. Levitt had a passer rating of 150.15. They had the same 24-6 touchdown to interception ratio. Where'd Jeremiah Love? Yeah, they had Cam Scattaboo. You know what I mean? Who was pretty flipping good. And CJ is love Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison. He was thrown to the number 8 overall draft pick in Jordan Tyson, and he was healthy that season. So he had a first-round draft pick at right tackle playing with him too. Like, there was plenty of talent there. So, no, I don't think it was all that close, to be honest. But that's not why. It really comes down to this. They had Sam Levitt as a top 100 player coming out of high school, and they had CJ Carr as a top 225 caliber player coming out of high school. That's what it comes down to. They refuse to reevaluate him as a quarterback. And I don't know why. He was a nice player as a redshirt freshman. He's okay reading a defense. He plays in a great system. He can scramble. He's got a nice arm. I've never seen what they see from Sam Levitt. I've never seen it. I do not get it. And he hasn't done anything at Arizona State to make me rethink my evaluation of him, and he's done a lot of things that should make them reevaluate theirs. They had him ranked as the number 1 portal player in the country. That was just crazy to me.
Yeah, that was going to be my rationale for it. Why does On3 have Levitt ranked as a top 10 player? Because it confirms what their bias was in him and coming out of high school, in the transfer portal. It's all that. It just backs up what they have always thought about him. That's why.
Yep.
From MC2737, what's stopping Notre Dame from going under center on short to go? Iowa has perfected the QB sneak in these situations. Any reason Notre Dame can't figure it out or refuses to try
it? I'm probably not the sympathetic person for this. I think this is one of the most overrated things around. I've seen teams that were great in short yardage in the shotgun, and I've seen teams that were not great in short yards in the shotgun. I've seen teams that are great in short yardage under center and teams that are bad in short yardage under center. I don't think where the quarterback lines up has really a lot to do with that. I also would argue that Notre Dame was very good at quarterback sneaks under center with Riley Leonard when the few times they did it. But you know when they were also really good with quarterback runs in short yardage was with Riley Leonard in the shotgun, because then he could see the hole. At the end of the day, you're going to be good in short yardage based on does your scheme sound, meaning it protects the edges, because that's where Notre Dame has a lot of problems. They do not protect the edges well in short yardage situations. And can you get a push up front? That's really what it boils down to. Busch push doesn't work if your offensive line gets beat off the ball. So I just don't think going under center really does a whole lot. If you can kick butt up front, you can convert first. I mean, remember how dominant Florida was running the football with Tim Tebow and how dominant they were in short yardage situations? You were not stopping Florida. He never went under center at Florida, ever. So I just don't think it matters a whole lot. I also have no problem if you do want to go under center if that's your offense. It's just not their offense. And so I just don't think it matters a whole lot. I'm just not someone who believes you got to go under center to move the chains. I don't. I think one of the advantages to going under center is that quick push in a real short yard situation, which I get. But another way to successful there is to hand the ball off in a situation where your quarterback can kind of, see the hole open up and see where the bulge is and attack the bulge. Meaning that's the part of the line that's getting the best push. So there's a lot of ways to be successful. There are very few things that I would say, Trev, you can only win and do it this way to be successful when it comes to a formation or a play call. Somebody in the chat said, I don't think Cam Newton ever did either. I don't remember Cam Newton getting under center at all.
No,
I don't remember Lamar Jackson going. He actually did a little bit, but that was part of their offense. They would actually do that normally. It wasn't something they just did in short yardage. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it just depends on if your offensive line can get a good push up the middle. Also, respect to the Iowa Hawkeyes, but if we're splitting hairs on who should be modeling things after who. I think Iowa should be wanting to model their offense a little bit more after Notre Dame than Notre Dame going under center and short yardage the way that Iowa does.
Yep, agree. Spencer in the chat said he thinks Sam Levitt's a top 10 quarterback, just not a top 10 player. And I said, I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. Trev thinks he is. Trevor has him at number 10. I did not have him in the top 10. He said he'd like to watch that show. We already did that show. So my top 10 was Dante Moore, CJ Carr, Arch Manning, Trinidad Chambliss, Josh Hoover, Julian Sand, Byron Brown, Darian Mensah, Damon Williams, and Malik Washington. And if I had a number 11, it wouldn't be Sam Levitt.
From Juan Delgado, not sure if this was talked about. In Josh Pate's one-on-one with Marcus Freeman, he mentioned that Notre Dame not being a place to find out if someone can do a job, thought it was funny because he was hired at Notre Dame.
I didn't hear that, so I can't really speak to the context. Did you watch that part of it yet, Trev? Yeah, I didn't watch that part, or at least I don't remember that part. So I can't really speak on that, but Juan, you'd have to help me out a little bit with the context of that one, but we'll watch the rest of it later. I watched a little bit of it, but I didn't see that. Here's a good question.
From Black Irish 864, our guy Christopher Galloway, Vince Young's Texas team versus Cam Newton's team in the championship. Who wins?
I think Texas had the better team. And Cam was great that year. Vince was also great that year. I think Texas had like 8 first-round draft picks on that team. Texas was it was Cam Newton, and it was Michael Dyer and Nick Fairley. They were like the 3 studs on that team, and everybody else was kind of a good player, but Cam really elevated that team. Vince was a great player, but Vince played on a much better team. I mean, Auburn barely beat a good but not great Oregon team in the title game. Like, Texas beat a historically good USC team. You know what I mean? Like the defending national champions, 2,000-yard rushers at running back, one won a Heisman, a big-time quarterback who also won a Heisman, Dwayne Jarrett. I mean, that team was just outstanding. And Texas beat them. And Texas went, toe-to-toe with them in that game. Forever. It was a back-and-forth game. Texas had a lead. USC had a lead. It was a great game. Cam did a great job elevating that team that year. Great job elevating that team. But, I mean, they're leading. People forget this. Vince led the team in rushing, but their running back on that team was Jamal Charles. So it wasn't like they needed him to run because they didn't have anybody else. They had Billy Pittman, David Thomas, Lima Swede, Quan Cosby, on that team. Defensively, they had Michael Griffin, Michael Huff, Aaron Harris, Brian Robeson. I mean, that team was loaded. Michael Huff was the big time safety they had. That team was absolutely loaded that year. Loaded. So I would go with Texas. Texas had the better team. You could argue that Cam's individual season was better than Vince's. I don't think that I would say it was better. I think it was comparable. I think that both Lamar Jackson and Vince Young, in a similar style of player, had better individual seasons than what Cam did. But they're very close. It's splitting hairs. They were all phenomenal. Cam was phenomenal in 2010. I just think Vince was every bit as good, and Vince played on a much better team. That's where it comes down to. It's not to sell Cam individually short. If you flipped quarterbacks, I'd still go with Texas. It's not about necessarily Vince versus Cam. I think Texas was better than Auburn is what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, I see that the exact same. I mean, it's called the quarterbacks a wash because they're 2 all-time collegiate greats. I think Texas just had a better roster.
Andrew Gilmore said, I think USC would have beaten Auburn. Agree. Exactly. Yeah. That's how good that's how big that win was for Texas. The runner-up would have beaten a lot of title teams. Yeah. Just one that just popped up.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, do you think Brendan Sorsby will be eligible for next year? I don't think he should be, but do you think he will be?
No, I don't think he will be. I think there's a chance he could get initially ruled eligible, or at least they put some sort of stay on it, depending on what. I mean, even though the NCAA hasn't actually said yet what the official ruling is, I think you'll see there's at least a chance for a lower court ruling that basically says the NCAA doesn't have the right to rule him ineligible. But I think the NCAA would. This is one they'll appeal till they have no more appeals left. I think they know they have to fight this fight. And it's an absolute embarrassment on Texas Tech's part to not, to not be fight. If let's say if Arch Manning did this, Texas Tech would be one of the loudest. I can't believe you're letting this guy play people. This goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you think it's wrong for someone else to do it, then you shouldn't fight for it either. And the problem is there's too many people in sports right now in college football that will do things that they know aren't wrong because it's good for them. And that's why I say, Joey McGuire, zero respect for that guy. Cody Campbell, I've lost all respect for him. Brett Yormark, lost all respect for him. And I didn't have a whole lot to begin with. The fact that you guys aren't railing about this, the fact that Brett Yormark's not on the phone every day with Texas Tech saying, no, you need to be the ones to announce that this kid can't play for you. We have to take a stand. Hey, I don't care what the NCAA does. We're the Big 12. We're not going to let him play. Now there's a due process involved here, but the kid has admitted to it. He's publicly said it. I don't know what investigation we need here. But no, I think at the end of the day, he won't play. I don't.
I don't either. From Irishman 7114, I know Notre Dame would benefit from the TV revenue and ticket sales, but would the perception of their schedule really benefit if they partnered with the Big Ten over the ACC?
Would it benefit? Yes. Would it benefit to the degree that I think some of us think it would? No, it wouldn't. Because at the end of the day, they're still going to talk trash about Notre Dame being an independent and all those type of things. It's still going to be the same stuff, Trev. You're still going to have years where you have like one good team. You have Ohio State on your schedule, but you don't get Oregon, you don't get USC, you don't get Indiana, and you get a down Michigan team and Iowa and Rutgers and Maryland. And, I can't believe Notre Dame plays this garbage schedule. That's what you get for being an independent. They should join the conference full time. That's exactly what we're going to get. 100% what we'd get. Would it be as strong? No. It would be, but it would still be happening, yes. And honestly, they would have a stronger schedule if they picked Big Ten teams as opposed to ACC teams. It's a much better league.
Yep.
But it would not change the narrative. The narrative isn't about the ACC. The narrative is about Notre Dame.
Exactly. It would never go if they join the if they join the SEC, they would hear it from the Big Ten. If they join the Big Ten, they'd hear it from the SEC, and so it'll just never go away.
Yep.
From Salty, Florida State's problems are legion. Boosters are not funding NIL, wishing to see changes at head coach and in the administration, and thus recruiting is terrible. How would you fix it?
I don't know that there's really an answer to that, Salty. I mean, the problem is Florida State doesn't have a lot of money. They don't have the money that some of these other programs do. Even if the boosters were willing to fund it, they just don't have the same thing to draw from that other schools do. It's not a real wealthy school. It doesn't have the money that Miami and Florida have flowing through the program. At the end of the day, you've got to try to find a way. You got to go to the boosters. Hey, you guys got to pay for something. You either got to pay for him to get the players to support him, or you got to pay for the buyout. Pick one. You can't complain about this coach that we have that we can't fire because we don't have the money for it, but then you're also not going to pay to support this coach. So what direction do we want to go here? So I think that they're in a bit of a catch-22, so to speak, here, Trev, in that they're gonna have to pay for something. What is it you're going to pay for? But at the end of the day, this is why Florida State is fighting so hard to get into another league, because they know they don't have the money through booster revenue to be successful. They need more TV money to do it. And that's that at the end of the day, what would I do to fix it? If I'm Florida State, I'd try to get into the Big Ten or the SEC. Yeah. That's what I'd try to do. Unfortunately, they're doing what makes I don't like it, but I get why they're doing it. I'm going to hammer them for it. I get why they're doing it, because they need that money. They don't have a like Notre Dame, for example, has had times where their donors did not give as much money to the program because they weren't going to support the mess that we saw on the field. But as soon as they were given reasons to support the program, the money flowed in. It wasn't this magical new group of boosters and donors that never existed before. But smart business people tend not to spend millions of dollars on a no surefire loser. You know what I mean? Like, hey, a guy could respect me in my previous business adventures all he wants, and I could have, done a great job of convincing him of other things. But say, listen, I've got this great idea. I need a $20 million. What are you going to do? I'm going to create a thing that helps generate fake snow. Oh, that's cool. Is you going to sell this to ski resorts and warmer? No. I'm going to go up to Alaska and try to sell it there. Like, yeah, I'm not giving you that kind of money. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to bet on a loser. They didn't become that wealthy to be that way. I mean, there's always risk. You could bet on something you think is a sure thing and it's not going to work out. Nobody's perfect or infallible. But when this guy ain't going to win, I'm not going to pay money to do that. Well, if you're not going to do that, then you need to pay money for the buyout. And that kind of gets into the next question here from him, which is, if Florida State fires Mike Norvell at the end of the season, his buyout is $46.9 million. This was the Brian Kelly situation at LSU last season. Has the time come to end 10-year, $90 million contracts? Here's my thing. I don't think the time has come to end 10-year, $90 million contracts. I think the time has come to end guaranteed contracts and guaranteed buyouts. That's what needs to go. If you don't do your job, you don't deserve to get the rest of your money. That's what I think. How that legally plays out, I don't know. But that's essentially what needs to happen. You get paid as long as you're doing the job. That's simple as that. Now, what you could do is, people have morals clauses. If you don't do this, you do that. Well, you know what? Start putting contracts in there. Hey, listen, if you have a season below 7-5, your buyout goes down. Your buyout is negated. It's gone. We can fire you at any point in time after that. Something like that. Hey,
Also,
go ahead. Go ahead, Trev.
Also, be smart around who you're giving 10-year, $90 million contract extensions to.
Yep.
Florida State pulled the trigger on that after one really good season where, and I know they should have been in the playoffs, but where they didn't even make the playoffs. Up until that point, he was 3-6, 5-7, and 10-3. He had one season of 13-1, and they pulled the trig on a 10-year, $90 million contract.
He had two good seasons, and
crazy.
You turned that into a 10-year, $90 million contract. Now, I'm okay with the 10-year, $90 million contract. What I don't like is a buyout that costs that much money. That's my whole thing. Is I'm not a big fan of capping coaches' salaries and things like that. Like, look, if you bring that much value to the program, just like I'm not a fan of capping NIL earnings for players. I'm not a big fan of capping salaries. But I do think these buyouts where people that fail can get tens of millions of dollars because they failed is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And that needs to go. So what do? Okay, you sign, like I said, you have to have things built into your contract that if you don't have this sort of record by this time, or if you go below this record or something like that, your buyout is done or goes down or something like that. If you can't get rid of buyouts altogether, maybe, and I don't know the answer to this, maybe legally you can't not have buyouts. I don't know. Let's just say there is. That's fine. Then again, negotiate your contract with your coach that says, if your record goes, below this, then your buyout is void, and we don't have to pay you that buyout. I'm giving you 10-year, $90 million contract so you can to win. If you don't win, I shouldn't then have to pay you. We're paying you that kind of money when you're good. If you stop being good, it's like I have with professional players. They always want to hold out and get more money if they play well. Well, does the team get the chance to take money away if you have a bad season? Hey, we're only going to pay you $5 million next year instead of the $9 million you were making because you went 4-8 last year. That, the whole thing is rigged towards the coaches, and there comes a point in time where that needs to get sway back a little bit, but not to the point where I'm going to start talking about capping coaches' salaries. And for someone who says, well, they want to cap players' salaries, I get that. I don't care that they're inconsistent. I'm not going to be inconsistent. I think there's a cap on the ways that players should be able to make money, but not the amount that they should make. That's where I'm at.
Fair enough.
All right, we did have a question pop up here from Brian Hockney.
Why do you think the Irish are not recruiting 2027 running back Xander Edwards?
Well, he's a 28 running back. I don't know why. I don't have a clue. He ran a 4.5 flat. He's 6'2", 220. Ran a 4.5 flat at the combine. He had monster numbers at Jacksonville Bowls last year. Normally there's like, well, I can point. Okay, I mean, I get it. I'd recruit him, but I can't. I watch his film. He can run. He can catch. He's got moves. He can run with power. I do not get it. Well, the only thing I can think of, I don't want to believe is an issue, but I don't understand it. At the end of the day, I don't talk too much about it because I want to see who they get first. That's part of it too. Let me see who they get in the 28 class. But you better have somebody really good teed up if you're not going to take Xander Edwards. So we'll see how that plays out. But I love Xander Edwards as a player. But if they get a kid better than him, then okay. I get the strategy. Like, I would have loved to see Mark Edwards' kid be at Notre Dame, but they got somebody better. If they get Zayden Jernigan, then I get it. But you better get somebody better than him if you're going to not recruit him. Otherwise, there's a problem. There's definitely a problem.
For sure. From KCMC, do you think Kedron Young has a legitimate chance to get into the running back rotation this year? Into the rotation? Absolutely. He just has to come back healthy. I answered a question on the board. I had an article come up about Kedron Young earlier this week, and it sounds like he'll be back in the summer and then ready to go for fall camp. That's what he spoke to the media about earlier back in, I believe it was either end of March, early April. But yeah, he has a different skill set than anybody else in the room. He is 5'11". He's, close to 240 pounds, but still very light on his feet, capable pass catcher. So, yeah, he has a legitimate chance to get back into the running back rotation this season. The biggest question for Kedron has never been around his skill set. It's, can you get and remain healthy? That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yep, bingo.
From Salty, how many wins will Wisconsin need this season for Luke Fickell to remain the head coach at the end of the season? And how damaging would a blowout loss to Notre Dame in week 1 be?
Better get blown out in week 1 than week 9. I mean, honestly, that's the thing is the thing that matters here, Trev, is going to be the number of wins and are they competitive in the second half of the year? Like, I don't think if Notre Dame beats them by 40, they're going to fire Luke Fickell. No. Like, I don't see that happening. Go ahead.
It's about becoming bowl eligible for them, and the higher you are above bowl eligibility for Luke Fickell, the better. You can't go back-to-back non-bowl eligible to school like Wisconsin.
And I think bowl eligible for them has to be better than 6-6.
Agreed.
Personally. Like, hey, we were bowl eligible at 5-7 because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams. Like, they've got to have a winning record. And I think, to Trev's point, I think the way you said that is really well said. The further past bowl eligible they are, the better. Because here's the thing. Let's say Notre Dame beats them by 40. They go out and beat Western Illinois. They beat Eastern Michigan at home. They beat Michigan State at home. They beat Rutgers at home. They beat Minnesota at home. They beat Purdue on the road. Let's say they beat USC at home and they lose at Penn State in a close game, lose at UCLA in a close game, lose at Iowa. And all of a sudden they're 8-4, 7-5, 8-4. 8-4 in this scenario that I just laid out, I believe, because I had them losing to Penn State, losing to Iowa, losing to Notre Dame, and then losing to let's say they lose to Penn State, UCLA, and Iowa and Notre Dame. Big home win over USC, and you're 8-4. He's coming back, and he should. That's really good progress. But anything short of that and the losses being competitive other than Notre Dame is going to get you fired. Now, where the blowout could hurt them is if the blowout kind of saps their confidence and then they don't play well coming out of that. But if you go 8-4, but Notre Dame blew you out, you know what they're going to say? Yeah, but Notre Dame kind of did that to everybody. Like, seriously, it's what you do after that game that matters. Just like if they play Notre Dame down to the wire, but go 5-7 again, he's going to be out.
Yeah, especially it helps out because Wisconsin plays Michigan State and Purdue. So does Notre Dame. And so Wisconsin could be like, hey, I mean, yeah, they blew us out, but we also beat two teams that they absolutely destroyed as well. So you kind of
and they blew those teams out. They beat this team. They beat that ranked team. They were just that team this year. Here's the last one, Trev.
From Jay Melvin, if Notre Dame gets who we think they will in this D-line class, how good is it going to be when they start playing? And Brian, do you prefer more dominant edge rushers or more dominant interior defensive linemen?
Both. I mean, look, you guys do this a lot, and I get it. It's fair questions, but like, I am just never going to really be okay giving you an answer that you like on an either or question when you don't have to settle for either or. Like, right, this is not the Brian Kelly era anymore. We don't have to settle for that or that. Both. You want to win a championship, recruit both. I think you can make a case of why a great edge pass rusher is more important. And you could say, hey, I can scheme with Chris Ash. You can scheme your way into a good run defense without an elite interior player. But I would argue that, but you didn't win a championship that way. You know what I mean? Like, you want to win a championship, I think you need the elite interior player. Well, you know, Indiana last year was more driven by their edge players, and so was Miami. Okay, but they were also really good inside. Both of them were really good inside. And the teams that had one or the other didn't make it as far as the teams that had both. And so I want both. To answer your first question, if Notre Dame gets who we think they're going to get, how good is it going to be? Well, what makes it so good and what makes last year's class so good? So, number one, you're stacking classes, back-to-back elite D-line classes. The other thing is you're getting impact players outside and inside, which speaks to the second part of Jay Melvin's question. Elijah Golden, to me, has a chance to be a difference maker. Tiki Hola can be a really good player in the middle. David Fuller-Runshoe has star potential. If you get a Braden Parks, who I really want in this class, you've got another really dominant interior big guy. And then on the edge, we know about Rodney and Ebenezer. You've already got Aiden O'Neal. If you can go get Abraham Cisse and Jackson Vaughn, you're now going to have the kind of D-line where it's going to be like a lot like the 18-19 defensive end group at Notre Dame. And this is something that Notre Dame should be pitching. Like, hey, y'all, we had 5 defensive ends that played on the 2018 and 2019 D-line together for 2 years together. 2 starters, 2 backups, and another guy. That 4 of them got drafted in the 5th round or higher, and the other one started games in the NFL. I'm talking about Jameer Jones. So, yes, the presence of Rodney and Ebenezer should not, keep the other 2 from thinking they can be dudes as well. And I would argue these guys have even more talent than most of those guys do. So I think that's the selling point, is that you're now going to have an elite defensive line where you're throwing rotations, just waves of elite players at teams. That makes you really hard to beat. Because if Rodney has an off game and Ebenezer has an off game, well, you still have Abraham and Aiden and Jackson, and you still have the interior players, and then vice versa. If, Abraham has a bad game, you still have Rodney and Ebenezer and the interior guys. If Braden Parks has a rough game, if they were able to get him, and I'm not saying they're going to, I still think Oregon slightly leads there, but Notre Dame's battling. I'm just making a point. David Fuller-Runshoe has a bad game. That's fine. You still got Tiki, you still got Elijah. You see what I'm saying? And that's why it's important to stack classes. It allows you to overwhelm teams with your athleticism. It creates great competition, and it helps you to keep guys fresh, and it helps you to avoid poor performances because one of your players has an off day. That's fine. He's having an off day, so we're going to lean more on this guy. And that's what can make you so dominant. Like, Jerry Rice was a great player, but if you had a game plan to take Jerry Rice out of the game, they still had Roger Craig, they still had John Taylor, they still had Brent Jones. Like, they always still had Tom Rathman. They always had guys that could, okay, yeah, you figure Jerry's having an off day, which didn't happen often. You still had other dudes that you could rely on. Michael Irvin's having a bad day. Okay, you still had Jay Novacek, you still had Alvin Harper, you still had Emmitt Smith. When teams have multiple dudes, it's harder to kind of stop them because, okay, we put all of our resources to keep Rodney Dunham from going off. So then Abraham Cisse on the other side had 2.5 sacks. Because, that's what great D-lines do. And that's what this class would give them a chance to have, is back-to-back classes with multiple elite players. That gives you a great chance to then have an elite defensive line.
No disagreements on my side, man. I'm with you. Working back to front, you need both. And once all these talented kids get to campus, if Notre Dame closes the way that we think that they can,
yep,
it's going to start being Georgia-esque
Right.
the way that they were able to just replace and reload and come at you in waves. It'll be very fun to watch.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Now, here in about 55 minutes, the guys are going live. Sean Stiers, Vince D'Addario are going live. 5:05 p.m. on IB Nation Sports Beat. They're talking about the 2014 college football playoff, which is a topic that I'm pretty convinced that Sean Stiers just does not want to stop talking about.
And again, happy belated birthday to my dude, Trevor Trowbridge, who's now one day in to his final year in the 20s.
Man.
Yep.
It sounds a lot sadder when you say it that way.
True.
Sounds a lot sadder, but no, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the birthday wishes that I was getting from a lot of the members of the IB community. It's going to be fun, very low key, but that'll do it for us here today on the afternoon show. We'll be back on Tuesday. If you're traveling for Memorial Day, going to visit family, enjoy the weekend, spend time with family, friends, all your loved ones. Be safe while you're traveling. Enjoy the Indy 500 if that's something that you're into. Jersey Bear, I'm confident that you'll be watching that one as well. On your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame college football as much as you do. But the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. So enjoy your weekend until Tuesday. That's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
I do want to say this before we all leave. That's the official end of the show. But I do want to, since we won't be having a show on Monday, I do want to mention Memorial Day. This is obviously a day where we honor those who have fallen, those who have given their lives in service of this country. We kind of then honor, in an even bigger picture, all those who served. I know my grandfather fought in World War II. Trevor, I believe you had a grandfather also. Correct.
I had one grandpa that fought in World War II. He was over in Nagasaki doing cleanup. And then I had another grandfather that fought in the Vietnam War.
Yep. I had a grandfather that fought in the Battle of the Bulge. I've had an uncle who was a Marine, and just a tremendous appreciation for all those who did serve. So we won't have that opportunity to say thank you to all of you on Monday because we won't be here. But you guys are always in our thoughts and prayers, and we greatly appreciate the sacrifices that those folks have made, including some who got drafted and still went and fought with honor and with courage. So we appreciate y'all very much. And it's why this great nation is this great nation. So we thank you all very, very much. And we remember you and thank you for all who are still with us and serve. Doesn't make your sacrificing less special. We appreciate you all as well.